I have I pulled a couple of different locations, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, to see what you guys thought. And I had asked, what would you like to see from a world building stream? On the Discord, here's the feedback I got. Homebrew world, map of Barovia, show how you build a city, your process going through it, including planting relevant NPCs. Major city building is always a good one to see. Cities are good. A lot of world maps out there, less for cities and dungeons. Build the world map for a specific story. Economy and kingdom relations. I don't even know what good resources there are, so this sounds awesome. Time to play God. So that was what I got over on our Discord channel. Let's see what I got over on YouTube as far as ideas for what people want to see from a world building stream. Let's jump over here. Here we go, community. What did you guys say on YouTube? Oh. Let's see. What you guys had said on YouTube. Basically, we're all very curious what program I use to make my map. In learning what's the initial world building and what needs to be done for a campaign. What's the bare bones requirements to then be able to develop a spiral campaign in between sessions. So you can definitely use help for those of us who've been building worlds. My suggestion is take a call from the Harn world, pick a calendar date, and nothing in the... that was a very complicated response. Excellent idea. Alright, so it seems like there's a couple of different ideas for what people want to see in a world building stream. They want to either see me pick like a city, a town, a specific location, build that whole thing from scratch. That seems to be, I guess I would say, people that are more interested in world building and kind of have like a general concept of what they want. They either want to, like, let's start somewhere and build a town. Then there's another camp of people who are like, I don't know anything. Thank you, Ash, for subbing. I realize I don't have notifications on, but I do appreciate your sub, and that's just me, because I always forget to put them on this particular overlay. But yeah, the other camp of people is like, I have no idea how to do anything with world building. What do I do? How do I make this become a thing? What do I need to do to start a game that in between sessions I can build that out? And that one I can definitely speak to. So, and then other people had said, like, I don't know about resources and what kind of things are out there. So, let's talk here a little bit. And again, guys, anybody in the chat, if you feel like you have questions or you want to shout stuff out, feel free to do so. So let me tell you a little bit about what happened in my homebrew campaign. I've run 60 episodes or so of a homebrew campaign over the past year and a half, 2 years. And this is I would say 95 to 98% built from the ground up, this campaign and this homebrew world. And that's the game of Evren that I run typically every Tuesday night, with the exception of the last Tuesday of the month. And the reason I say it's like 95 to 98% is because I didn't feel like building a whole new pantheon of gods. Just honestly is a lazy thing, and I like the Faerunian gods, but I also like gods from other cultures as well. I like the Norse gods, I like the Eberron deities. So like that's a lot of good stuff, and that's not to say that there aren't unique deities to my world that sort of fill some other role, because those do exist. But I wanted to, keep it pretty light on that respect. Also, I have players that are relatively newish to D&D, and they just got learning all of the Faerunian gods, so I said let's keep that. But everything else in my world, I'd say, is largely just designed all by me. So I basically the plan was I was going to take, hello friends and everyone in the chat, I had planned to take about a year, was my plan, to take a whole year off of running games on Nerd Immersion while other people ran games that I would play in, so that I could build a world. And like everything I do in my life, including my Dungeons & Dragons DM prep, I waited probably until the last minute to start cobbling things together. Now, I had some very loose ideas, and then I started to flesh them out a little bit, but it started to kind of not go anywhere. And I'll show you some examples of that in a little bit. There are a lot of good tools out there that I think will help, and I should probably use them. So we're going to experiment with some of those tonight as well. So if I go back to, this isn't my original notebook. My original notebook is around here somewhere. I don't know, it might be in the other room. But basically, I had started thinking about what I liked in fantasy, what I didn't like in fantasy. What would I want if I could run a game, or I was going to play? I've played in a lot of Dungeons and Dragons campaigns. If I could change something, what would I do? What do I find the most interesting? And that was kind of my jumping off point. And then I went from there, and that started to build things out. So let me give you a couple of examples of high-level concepts that I thought about in my game. One, I don't like the 5th edition Dragonborn that exists in the Player's Handbook in 5th edition. I'm not a huge fan of it, so I said, let's toss that out. I really like the Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 version of a Dragonborn, which is someone who undergoes a ritual to Bahamut. They transform themselves. So, you know what? We're going to call it, that's going to be the Dragonborn of my world. And I said, what else do I like? I said, I really like the concept of cool weapons, like legendary magic items, things that you see in a lot of other fantasy, right? So think like, I don't know, like He-Man's Sword of Power, or the Shards of Narsil, or all these other really cool, epic magic items. And I said, so I want to put those in my game, but a lot of those things only gain renown if a hero makes them legendary. The item itself may be powerful, but the hero makes it something. So I said, well, let me start. I want to design a bunch of legendary heroes that existed at some point in my campaign in the world history. And they had everyone had a really cool, unique item. And that was something that I built out those items, and I built out the characters. And then that started to be like, were they all a party? Did they have inter-party conflict? So that sort of snowballed into, how would I play if I was one of those characters in a campaign with these other characters? What would happen to our party? So that built out some world history there. And that's, again, still not fully fleshed out. It just sort of exists. And then I was like, well, what else do I like? Well, I really like tieflings. I think tieflings are a really cool race, and I feel like they've grown in popularity quite a bit back from when I originally started playing. And I said, but I like tieflings that are of all sorts of weird, different colors. And if you look at the Player's Handbook, it's basically like from a red to black, I think is the shade, maybe, or like reddish or something like that. So I said, I really want to change. I want to have like pastel, like seafoam green tieflings and all this other stuff. So then I was like, well, I guess I could just allow that. But I was like, wouldn't it be interesting if tieflings in Forgotten Realms and a lot of other history, they kind of get shit on because they're sort of demonic in nature, and people look down on them because of that. So I said, I don't want that to be the case in my world. Really, I want tieflings to sort of be accepted. So I built a story around one of those legendary heroes through a sacrifice, basically, to save a lover who happened to be a tiefling, and a whole long story. But I was like, what if there was tieflings that sort of now in the world are being born, and they're not tied to an infernal heritage. They're tied to a celestial heritage by this character who sacrificed themselves and was elevated to sort of like angelhood. And I was like, that would be cool. And hey, wouldn't it be cool if they didn't have horns? They had halos instead. And yes, I realize Aasimar are a thing, but I like tieflings. So I was like, what if I can make an angelic tiefling? It doesn't change the way things are with Aasimar, but it's a tiefling with sort of they kind of have been formed, and this is sort of like a Darwinian thing, like evolution. These things now tiefling are being born this way, right? Where they sometimes don't have tails or have horns at all, or things like that. So that was a thought process that I came up with, and I was like, I could run with that. And then I was like, well, how would the other infernal tieflings feel about that? And then I said, well, some of them probably be like, whatever. But then you might have zealotry ones who are like, no, they should accept us for who we are. Why are these people changing? And then I was like, well, look, now I have a tiefling race war in my world. That just sort of spiraled out of that. So now I have these angelic kind of tieflings and these standard tieflings, if you will, and they have a big internal conflict, and that became a thing that exists in my world. And then I just started saying, like, well, what do I like? What enemies do I like? And I really love gnolls, right? I think gnolls are one of the coolest enemies in Dungeons & Dragons. I just always have liked them. The thing in 5th edition about devouring flesh and sort of being like these crazy mindless creatures, and a hyena that eats from like a corpse can become a gnoll, and all that cool stuff I thought was really, really cool. So I said, that's going to be a part of my campaign. We're going to put gnolls in it. And I really like Yinagu, the demon lord of gnolls, so I said, well, he's going to play a part in it. And then I said, well, how can I build that out? Exactly. Tiefling Gen X versus Tiefling 2.0. So I said, well, that'll be a thing. Maybe Yinagu trampled the world at one point and was taking it over. Maybe those legendary heroes that I was talking about, maybe that was one of the things that made them legendary. They stopped Yinagu. I haven't even decided if that's actually part of my world yet. That's just like a theory. A lot of it's kind of ethereal at the moment. So that was something that I thought of. And then I was like, well, what else do I think? I think gnolls have there's a cool gnoll types, and I saw some homebrew gnolls that people made of like a gnoll spellcaster. And then you have the couple of existing gnolls, like a gnoll archer and the flind and all these different kinds of gnolls. So it's like, wouldn't it be cool if the first time Yinagu trampled the world, those first however many hyenas that became gnolls became like the archetypical type of each gnoll that I'm coming up with. So you got your flind, your scout, your witherwind, all these different types of gnolls, and they became a progenitor of those, and then the gnolls they made became those types of gnolls, and that kind of built out that different childhood offspring of different gnolls. And I said that would be cool, and maybe they didn't actually beat Yinagu, maybe they just drove him away, and maybe there's something to do with the first ones of all of these, and they can maybe be brought back to bring Yinagu back to the world. And that was, again, that's about as far as that concept went. And I said, well, what else do I want to do? And I was like, well, I really like the Warforged, but I also really like the Terminator. So maybe the Warforged aren't just like maybe they were something that the dwarves created. And so the dwarves made Warforged to help them in a war. But then the Warforged gained sentience and fought back against the dwarves, so the dwarves had to fight their own creations, and maybe there's not really that many Warforged in my world. That was something I thought of. And I said, if you know anything about me, aside from gnolls, kobolds. Something I love immensely. And I came up with the idea for the Swollbold in a 24-hour stream. It's been published in the Creatures Codex from Kobold Press, which is the big, hulking, tough kobolds. So I said, well, it would be really cool if that was a group of kobolds in my world, and the typical kobolds were actually pretty intelligent and smart and take the sort of archetypical position of a gnome in my world. So there really aren't too many gnomes, but the tinkerers and the creators of crazy stuff are the kobolds. And maybe these smart kobolds and these beefy, musclehead kobolds hate each other. And they have a war. And then I realized, I guess my campaign's going to be about a lot of race wars and war. So that's a thing that's happening in my world. And then, little bits like this start to flesh out, and then you figure out what your players are going to play. Yes, Greg, that is a thing. So I have my Swollbolds versus my Kobolds, and they live in an area that I named the Bold Lands, and they fight over a bridge. They don't know why, but it's been going as long as they can remember. See, I'm not a gnome guy. There are gnomes, they exist in my world, but I'm just not a huge fan of, I guess I'm less a fan of the gnomes being the archetypical tinker. I wanted to flip the script a little bit, so I made it my kobolds. So there's the ones who create the airships and create all the wacky kind of Magitech stuff. That's a thing that happened. And you get little ideas like this, you start learning what the players are going to play, what races are they going to be, and then you can start to build things around that. And something I had thought up pretty early on was, I want to build a map. I want to start building a map for my homebrew world. I think that would really, really be cool. So what should I do? And I do have dwarves, P-Fred, in the chat here. I do have dwarves. Dwarves are They do have the big smithies. They have a lot. They're a big part of the campaign and the world. But you know, the kind of wonky. They're also very much into the underground because they've been in a war. And I went with a sort of Tolkienian Mines of Moria situation. It's not a Balrog, right? Like they dug too deep and they found an underwater lake and they started using the water from that lake to cool forges because liquid cooling is better, and that pissed off local Kuatoa, and the Kuatoa they're fighting the dwarves because the dwarves, in the typical dwarven fashion, don't think they did anything wrong by pumping water from this lake to cool their forges. It's a Kuatoa primarily habited area, and they like the water to be the temperature that it was, so that's something. So they've been kind of dealing with their own thing. And then turns out, pretty much everyone is at war. Yes, you're more or less right in your assumption there, Ash. But then I found out that one of my players is going to play a dwarf. Okay, so now I have to build out that a little bit and figure out what he's going to do, what his class progression is going to be, how does that factor in to my world. And I have someone who's going to play a tiefling, right? She's going to be one of those celestial tieflings. Okay, well, how does that factor in? Does she know about the race war? What's her whole story? So I have to build around that. See, I also didn't want to have... that was another thing. Like, I never liked the idea of... the humans are always, you know, like the new race in the world. And they're the ones causing all the trouble. And I feel like that's just done so much. So I said, well, maybe they're just they exist. And I haven't decided. This is stuff maybe we'll build in the time that we work here together. What exactly... like the world history, I have pockets. You know, I have little pockets here and there of the world history. Like, this happened at some point in the past. This happened at some point in the past. But then I said, you know, where does this fit chronologically? How old is the world? Right? Are we doing like a Big Bang scenario where like the world is just created? Was it crafted by gods, titans, some sort of larger elemental thing? All stuff that I've been thinking about, but I've never put down on paper. So let's jump over here to, I guess we'll go over here to Incarnate. So I'll show you guys here. So this is a website, for those of you who are unaware. There's a website called incarnate.com. It's inkarnate.com. You can see it at the top. And it is a map building site. And we can mess around and build some maps just to kind of play around a little bit. It's primarily designed for more overarching world maps, I'd say, is the best thing it's for. Though you can build, they've added a lot of functionality to it. You can shrink it down now and build more like localized area maps, and you could even do city maps if you really focus on it. But a lot of the stuff is pretty much basic the whole way through. So what I started with was a world map. And this has gone through countless iterations. Incarnate did a server switch at one point. So there's a pro version of Incarnate and there's a free version. The free version you can build largely just about anything you want. You can't export the maps to as high a resolution. And certain like assets aren't available in the free version. But for the most part, a lot of it is. Because this is here, let's go ahead and move us over here. Because this is just the way it's going to work, probably for the best. Move this over. Oh wait, that can stay here. And we'll move this over here. There we go. So anyway, like I was saying, I had started out with a world map in the original free version of Incarnate, and then they did a server shift, so I couldn't transfer it over to the pro version, so I had to sit there and rebuild the entire map. But you can see right here, you can go in and you can paint a whole bunch of different colors here, and you can see all the different assets. Like, they've added some even since I've checked, like, see these stone and rock gardens? These are new for your more localized, like, town and city maps. Here you can go and add in different things, like you can see all the different assets that you have. Again, consider this is the pro version. But all these different things you can add into the world. And as far as like landscaping things, fire, floating islands, trees, swamps, cherry blossoms. The cherry blossoms and the bamboo are new from when the last time I was here. And then text and grids and things like that. So I started off building this big map here. And then I said, okay, I built basically the base design of the map. And then I said, well, what do I want to put on my map? Where do I want to put cities? How big and the scale on this has probably gone under about 6 different iterations before I finally decided on this. We'd been playing in the game in the world before, and I changed the scale like 3 or 4 times. I don't think my players have actually figured that out yet, but like I changed the scale because I was like, I feel like we can get across the world too quickly. I want it to be bigger. And then I started saying, well, I think I want to have a city here. And one here, and maybe one up in the north, and figure out some of this other stuff. And then it became, well, what do I name the cities? So I started taking people that I knew, and started crafting their names around the different cities. And then that actually helped me a lot. I started naming cities derivatively from people that I knew or people that I play games with and things, and then said, well, if I'm going to make the city after them, maybe I'll start to build out parts of the city around that person. So, for example, let's say Westwick over here, right? This is built around my first son. So, he's a 2.5-year-old, but he loves dinosaurs, and he loves trucks and tractors and that kind of a thing. And he loves, citrus fruit and strawberries and oranges and My Little Pony and cartoons and trains. So then all of a sudden I start sitting down. I'm like, all right, well, what can I do? And I start like, well, we know Westwick. They don't have beasts of burden in Westwick. They only have dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are the beasts of burden. They use all manner of different kinds of dinosaurs for everything in that town. And that's because of, my son's a kid and he loves dinosaurs. And I was like, he loves trains. So they have like a train, like a track through the city to move stuff around. They're the largest exporter of citrus fruits in the big farming town because he loves farms, tractors, and citrus fruit. So that's like all things that started to come together as I sat down and started to build this. The trick was, the biggest trick was when I was building towns that weren't named after anybody. Then I started to actually have to think of things, and then that's become a tougher process. And we'll go into that in a little bit. But I wanted to showcase Incarnate here to give you an idea. So one thing I started doing more recently was I'll take a big town, a world map like this, and break it up into regions, and then try to get you a zoomed in version. I haven't done this for everything, but let's go ahead. And you saw the bold lands I was talking about with the kobolds. So I built that map out to be a closer map because the party went there. Thank you, Craven Wolf. Yeah, Incarnate's pretty great. So, like, see this? You can see I zoomed in. So this was the bold lands section. I will get to that, Ash. So this is that. So I zoomed it in and covered just this area. And I decided, because I'm lazy, that the maps were built on the smart kobold side of things, so they only have mapped out stuff on their side, not on the other side. So I didn't get to map this out, and the party never went over to the swobold kind of musclehead side of the bridge, so I never had to build any of that out. Now, if they decide to go back there, I'll have to go in and update this map and fill it all out, but at the moment, that wasn't the case. And I started saying, oh, what do I want to throw in here? And I started building some stuff out there, and that's how that came to be. And then, what I also said, well, I could just build my entire campaign around the whole continent of Everend. But I said, wouldn't it be cool if there were other continents? So I started looking at, like, how many other continents do I want to have in this world? And I played in a very, very short-run homebrew campaign that a friend ran where I had built out the main city, and that was over here, this Northern continent you see over here. I had built out basically most of the main hub city that was there, and she sort of built some of it, and then I said, you know what, I love that city and some of the characters and the lore that I built around it. I'm adding that into my game. And then now this is a city, right, that exists, and some of these other areas as well. And this one kind of looked like Squidward, so I liked that one. It was an accident. You know, just kind of everything starts to come together. But again, I'd say I still don't have more than half of my world built, and that's something maybe we can learn how to do together. Another tool that I have not used that I know a lot of people like is World Anvil. So this is a one-stop shopping kind of way for building a world. Now, I've never used it, so we can learn about this together. But you can see here, so here's like, what does it say? World Anvil. Here's my dashboard. So you can see there's all these different, things that are tied into this. I know they're tied into Project Dios, which is from the guys at Dungeon Fog, who I'm pretty close friends with. So let's go down here and let's go to building. Let's see what we got. Create a new building. So now it's got sections for building, landmark, title, freeform, prose, or vignette. We've got sections, design about it. We can put tags and things on this, access it. Are there secrets here that we don't want the players to be able to see? But you can see all these different pieces you can add. Who owns the, or you can build out organizations, different characters. Do you want to add specific conditions or conflicts? I'd fill this one out pretty heavily because I have a lot of war in my world. But there's also stuff, if we go back to the main page, you can see here, you can kind of drag and drop different areas on your world map. You can build a map in World Anvil as well. So let's try, I haven't done that, so let's see what that's like. Or can you only, let's create a map. Okay, so at the moment you can only import maps, it looks like. So let's see. Let us import a map here. We'll import the map we were just looking at. Oops. Alright, map. Alright, my mouse is being funky, so let's just create that map. Let's see what that does for us. Aha! See, so now we have this map here, and we can drag over here. We could do different, we could tag different things here, which is something that I may end up using by the end of this. We may say, okay, well, the party was over here, and we could fill in a form down below here with our different marker lists. What happened there, where is the party? So this may be something I end up using. I have the license, I might as well use it, right? I mean, has anybody in the chat used World Anvil at all? I'd be curious to see. I know, I actually know some fiction writers actually use World Anvil for like the timeline tracking and the character tracking aspects of it for tracking their novels that they're writing. So I'm curious, has anybody messed around with World Anvil, or do they know of any other service that they use to kind of keep track of their own campaigns, or are all you guys just kind of here to learn from whatever nonsense that I've come up with, which is fine. But it's a collaborative effort here with you guys in the chat, so I want to know. Let's talk and see what's going on. So, let's see. Okay, thank you, Greg. So let me come over here to my Google Drive, and I'll tell you, so this is how I started building cities, right? So if we go to Everend, I started with a template, because I had, I can see World Anvil being a little overwhelming. Thank you for, oh man, we got our Uchiha's back. Oh, by the way, I do have your, sorry for the folks who won any of the Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus contest stuff. I have everything packaged up. I just need to mail it out. Things have been crazy over the weekend, so I did not get a chance to mail it out, but I will do that this week. Ideally tomorrow, but I'm in training all day Tuesday and Wednesday, so that may not happen. So here's the city template that I had come up with, right? So this is a very simple document here, where I had said, put a section for your name, the history, the kind of geography of the city, what the general population is, the government system, the military, the economy, the coinage, religion, laws, and then build out places of interest, right? Government buildings, inns, taverns, brothels, clubs, different shops, noble family houses, temples, other points of interest, and holidays. So that was kind of like a template that I came up with what things do I want to input into the towns that I build into my game. These are the kind of things that I want to think about. And then my goal, it has not happened for every town that exists, and sometimes towns are made up on the fly, and you just have to kind of roll with it. But I said, if I build this out for every city in my world, then I will feel pretty good about myself. I feel like I'll have a good enough basis when people get into that town that I will be able to talk and seem like I know what I'm talking about and that I'm not just winging it. And believe me, the party sometimes goes, and you'll know this if you're a DM, the party will sometimes go in the complete opposite direction of what you had planned. So you may have planned on them going to the town that you spent all the time building out, and then they go in a complete opposite direction, and you have to come up with something else. Or, better yet, they destroy the area you were thinking they were going to go to. So let me go to one of the cities that I built out. So Bricken's Homestead was a city way in the north, one of those legendary heroes I alluded to at the start. I had said I really like this character that I've come up with. I want him to sort of be like a holy warrior. He kind of aided some of that larger party of legendary heroes, but he was kind of on the outside. But he traveled north and he quit adventuring and he founded a town, and then it became known after him. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So you can see here on Bricken's Homestead, I had put in a little history about it, right? Legendary Templar, Bricken Ironstar settled down, cleared local trees, built himself a log cabin to stay in, and was hoping to live out his retirement in seclusion. Over time, people knew the legendary hero was staying there, and they started to move there, and he didn't really discourage them because he wasn't a bad person, but he just wanted to be left alone. And then slowly, over time, he grew older, became the de facto leader of the town, and then basically the people revered him so much that anything that he did in life sort of became a thing with them. Like, that's like the code that he lived by became the code of the town and different things like that. So I decided that I wanted this to sort of be what I would consider like an Alaska, right? Like, tough, hardened people live here. It's not going to be a place where your average Joe's going to be able to cut it. This is like a wilderness, northern frontier town. And if you wanted to survive here, you're going to have to be tough. So I said the population was about 7,500 people, and then I made a little chart on metachart.com to break down the racial breakdown here. It's largely human, but there is a large Goliath population because it is in the north and mountains are nearby. And then there's a little bit of other races around here too. So then I said, well, how do I want to deal with the governmental system here? I said, believe me, we'll get to that, Ash. City council is made up of 5 members. And this is a fun part, too, where what I would say more often than not, your best bet for governments and militaries and things like that is to use real-world history. Look up, feudal systems, medieval systems, other areas you may not be familiar with. You may find something interesting. Like how are disputes settled? Are they settled in front of a court of law, in the street with street justice? How does it work? And you may find that is like a really cool thing. You think it really fits, and you add that into your own world. If you're not planning to publish your campaign as like a published book, feel free to look into the long history of fantasy books and RPGs and Dungeons and Dragons, and maybe there's an obscure Dungeon Magazine or Dragon Magazine article from the 60s, or from the 70s or the 80s, and you can look up something and be like, this is really cool, I want to put this in my game. And if you're not planning on making it a published book for people to buy, then you're not going to run into any issues with plagiarism, and, imitation is the serious form of flattery. So, I made this kind of council idea, and then I said, well, who's going to be on the council? So I said it's going to be the head of the military guard. There's a hunter's guild as well, so the lead of that, kind of the head priest of the area, a sailor or ship captain, and then a townsfolk chosen at random who rotates every 3 years or as necessary. This is to give the people a voice. So then I said, well, Bricken Ironstar was a really tough military guy, so he was a big fan of, people being self-sufficient, so that's probably going to mean a militia-style government. And that's kind of what I decided. It's a voluntary position, but around 75% of the population is either an active or past member. Current member count's 1,000. Mandatory service is a 3-year term, during which active members are provided lodging and meals at the barracks. After your active term is over, you can re-enlist for active duty or remain on the reserve list. So I wanted to basically say these are hardy people. Like, don't go fucking with these people because you're like, you're like hotshot adventurers. These people may be able to kick your ass. Like, I think one of the things, I don't know if I actually have it written in here, but like everybody in the town is basically, if you take the commoner stat and like boost their health and give them proficiency in Constitution saving throws, was like the basis for the generic townsfolk. I said the Silent Quiver is a small band of hunters and trappers who bring in wild game from the outside. Economy in here is mostly trade. So Northern Frontier Town, I decided Yetis are a big thing, and I like saber-toothed tigers, so they're a big thing too, so fur trade. Saber-toothed tiger, scrimshaw, lumber, because they are nearby a forest. And the local ice wine-esque alcohol of choice is Starshine. And I decided that this was like a legendary sort of high-test alcohol that had a bunch of different properties. This is actually produced by Bricken Ironstar, so then people are like, oh, he just made it, and they're like, let's call it Starshine, because he made it, and it's great. Active ports shipped out, and then the dwarves are nearby, so they can trade with the dwarves. Standard coinage, nothing crazy, because I did make other continents, so there's different coinage, because I like the idea of coins from a different place, just for the making the world seem more real, which is something that gets glossed over a lot of the time, and it's fine. You don't have to focus in on the minutia of coinage. Religion, I was thinking of trying to be, who would survive out here? So I said the Triad, which is a Faerunian, again, I kept that pantheon. Kind of a triad is the 3 gods, Ilmater, Tyr, and Torm, and that's what Bricken worshipped, so that became the religion of the town. This is what Ash was talking about. I decided that Bricken, I said it was a frontier town, and I was thinking frontier Old West, so I started looking up Old West laws, like the laws of the cowboys, right? And then I said, okay, laws of the cowboys, maybe that's the code that Bricken followed, that kind of a thing. And then, like, that's just how he lived his life, so then the town that built around his namesake decided to adopt that as their code, basically their law system. So again, they're tough people, frontier justice, basically, you guys figure it out. You have an issue with someone, you figure it out. If it needs to be brought before the people, it can be, but typically they deal with it themselves. And they follow his code. Don't inquire into a person's past, judge them for who they are today. Defend yourself whenever necessary. Look out for your own. Don't make a threat if you're not prepared to deal with the consequences. Always drink with your sword hand to show friendly intentions. Help others in need. Give your enemy a fighting chance. Be there for a friend when they need you. Honesty is absolute. Your word is your bond. A handshake is more binding than a contract. And cheaters lick the floor. That one came about in the course of the game. But these are his laws that he lives by, and now that's just a thing that exists in my world because I saw some cowboy rules, right? The don't drink with your gun hand to show friendly intentions, or drink with your gun hand to show friendly intentions is a cowboy thing, right? Like if you are a right-handed, 6-shooter and you drink with your left hand, that's so you could still pull your gun to shoot. So if you drink with the hand you normally shoot with, it's showing that you're not there to cause any trouble. Simple stuff like that, but it helps to build a world and make it seem more real. And then I was like, let's think about, we've got a council, town hall, what about what inns do we have in the town? It's a 7,500 people, how many inns do we have? What do we have as far as taverns go? Is there a brothel? Yes, there is, sure. Blacksmith, why not? And then we just started building out things that I feel like they'd have, right? I made a candlestick maker, where you can get candles that light in every different color, as well as soaps. And a lot of the times, guys, aside from me doing this stream potentially in the future, I use you guys in my Discord channel to come up with ideas. I'll just pull you like, hey, I'm thinking about building a town. What should I add? And you guys give me suggestions, and then I plop them in here. Again, Morning Wood, run by an orange-colored tiefling named Morning. He's painfully unaware of the coincidental name. I also like pun shop names, as you'll learn. And then again, we have all of our different vendors here. They have the temple, and then this is where I started adding in points of interest. This is something I added in later on. What can you do in the town? What's interesting in the town? So there's the Bricken Museum. This was the house that he lived in. He disappeared. No one knows how or where he went. And basically all of his legendary gear that he had is still on display in there. I put a job board in the town so that you can throw whatever you want to put on the job board that people can deal with. Icy and Pop's Trippin' Sippins. Icy is a small frost giant kicked out of his clan for his diminutive stature. He befriended a dwarf named Pop, and after an argument over who took down a moose when they were both hunting. This led to a friendship, and eventually Icy ripping up some of the local trees. Rumor has it when mammoths roamed the area, their waste acted as fertilizer, seeping into the ground. This caused the roots of the trees to develop semi-narcotic properties. When fermented, it can make a drink similar to ginger beer that causes hallucinations. That was a random thing. Old Grundar's cabin. I basically made this the Evil Dead cabin in the woods. If you're familiar with the Evil Dead series, the party went there. The 7 lumberjack sisters looking for husbands, and then supposedly a self-described immortal king of the goblins in the nearby mountains. I don't know, I was just trying to come up with something interesting that the players could possibly search out if they wanted, or not at all. And I also feel like holidays are a good thing. And I decided that, one thing I wanted to do is I wanted to have regional holidays. So, like, you may have, like, holidays that are the entire continent wide. Something more like a Thanksgiving, right? Something like that, but your town may have a Founders Fest that's celebrated in your town, but nowhere else in the world. So that was how that came about. So my ideal goal with you folks, and forevermore, would be to have this level of detail for every town in my world. That way, I could always fall back on something interesting if the players go there. So for example, let's go back to the map, right? I'll show you a little bit. I'll give you a little bit of an idea. So my party, when we first started streaming the game, they were going to be in the underground dwarven city of Carrick Fairn. I still have not finished building out that city. They only were there for 3 episodes, then they went to Bricken's homestead, which worked out because I had built that. Then they went over here to Gowager, which I had built out. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then they went all over the place, and I barely had anything built for any of those locations. Now they're down here in Dithair, which all I decided was I wanted to make it like a Gotham City. So I looked heavily inspired by ideas by Baldur's Gate. The city of Baldur's Gate in Faerun has a lot of the same kind of vibe I wanted to have for this city. It's known for its fighting pits and arenas and that kind of stuff. This was built around my friend Jake, who I play games with every Tuesday. So I said they're huge fans of coffee, and they really like combat, because those are things that Jake likes. They also love puns and dad jokes, because Jake likes those. And that's sort of been like the driving factor of the town, plus a little bit of like Gotham City. Maybe there's some criminal organizations going on. That's how I built that city. But I don't have a document like I just showed you for this city, and the players have been there for about 6 or so sessions. And I keep meaning to go back and do this, but I don't. So part of my other hope for this stream as well is I should be doing more world building. I feel like I'm not doing my players a service by not doing more. And I'm hoping that if I actually dedicate a stream to working on it with you guys, then I'll do it. It'll force me to do it. So lastly, I just wanted to show you another town on a smaller scale or on a larger scale because Ash asked about it. So here's the town of Gouger. This is a town of about 600 people, so significantly smaller. This is a super hippie town. Surrounded by coral reef. The ships and inhabitants crashed on the reef, made their way to shore. They realized they couldn't get over the mountains, things were dangerous, so they just started living there. And basically, over time, basically cultivated the entirety of the world's weed, is the best way I can describe it for you. And that's what they do. They're just a bunch of cool hippie dudes and chicks who hang out, smoke weed all day, pretty much, and that's how they live their lives, man. That's just how it is. This is heavily inspired by my good friend Pat, who I play every Tuesday, so that's where that came from. And if you've watched on Tuesday, it'd start to make sense. There's no government in the town. It's just a bunch of people who hang out. They just basically have a drum circle every week, and like sometimes they talk about stuff, but mostly no one has any issues, man. Everything's chill. They have a shrine to Shantea, but no kind of heavy, strict religion. Life is too short, and nobody knows what to do about it, so like no laws, man. Everything's cool. They have a hostel, and then I made a bunch of different weed farms, and like I know nothing about weed. Be flat out honest with you, but my friend Pat loves the stuff, so I did a whole bunch of research on different kinds and strains of weed, and I made a bunch of different farms with a bunch of different weed, and I wrote up all the stuff that I found on the internet, and he absolutely loved it, and that's awesome because I made that town for him to enjoy, and that is what ended up happening. Right now, again, I have punny shop names. There's a glass blower. There's a tinker. There's a couple of different places where you can get food. There's a turtle who makes drug rugs for people to wear. There's a tabaxi lady who plays with yarn. There's a dude who makes rolling papers and other books. There's a cafe where they make the best mac and cheese in the world. There's a shop called Fish, spelled with a PH, and all they do is sell fish. There's a chick who just makes matches. Chick who makes wind chimes. Like, people make crystals. Pat's big on rocks and crystals, too, so that's why. Cowabunga. I mean, come on, guys. I had to... It's just what it is. There are a bunch of surfers in this town, too, because they're right near the water. And this was just, again... and then I added the Founders Fest. On the 20th day of the 4th month of the year, everybody celebrates the day that the city was founded. It is, I don't know. You gotta have fun with it, too. That's the other thing about world building. If you're gonna sit there and spend time and devote this much time to building a world out, you gotta have fun with it. Because if you don't have fun with it, why are you bothering to do it in the first place? So, that's a little bit of a peek behind the veil as far as what happened thus far in my world. A couple of cities. For those of you who are new to it and are like, what do you need to do as far as world building goes? What I would say is, one, determine what's your plan for your campaign. How long do you want it to be? Is this planned to be a forever campaign where your players are going to sit down at the table tomorrow and you're going to play until you all grow old? Is this a campaign you're going to run for 12 episodes? Maybe 12 sessions? What's the overall goal? And the reason I say that is you don't want to spend and sit down at this table and spend hours and hours of your hard-earned time devoting into all of these crazy obscurities that if your players are only going to play for 5 episodes or 10 episodes or whatever the case may be, and then that's it, you spend all that time building that out, and it's never going to get used. So I would say what you need to build out if you're going to start doing this for yourself, figure out what the players are, what their classes and their races are. Let them tell you what that's going to be. Or maybe you work together to build that out together. And then think about how that factors into your world. Is this an obscure race? Is this a common race? Are there not a lot of spellcasters, so this person's really unique? What's the magic situation in your world? And then I would start with the town where they're all going to be in at the start of the campaign. And then you start there pretty small. Do they all know each other? Do they grow up in this town? What's the deal with the town that they're in? And then from there, is it a coastal town? Is it a town, is it in the heart of the mountains, in the forest? Think about that. Then you're going to think about, well, what do I want to accomplish in this campaign? Do I want it to be a social intrigue campaign where it's all going to be politics in the big city? And I don't really have to worry about what's going on outside. Then you're going to have to build out your social structure and all of that kind of a thing, because that's going to determine what the gameplay is going to be. Are these characters going to go off into the forest and adventure to try to track down a tower where there was a wizard and defeat the wizard? Is that the plan? Well, what are they going to encounter in the forest nearby? And that's just kind of where it starts to get fun, right? What do I want to throw at them? What do I want to say lives in this forest? What's the deal with this wizard in the tower? You kind of got to figure out what you want to do, what the experience you want to have. I mean, maybe you really want to throw a dragon at your players. Figure out how you're going to work that into the campaign. That's something that I always like to sit down and say, what monsters do I like? What do I like to see in the campaign? I love to build characters. So a lot of the times I'll have my players, I haven't really done it too much in this campaign, but I used to, my players would often encounter enemy adventuring parties or other enemies because I would roll up a character and then that's who they'd end up fighting. Like a group of characters that I would build out, or like maybe the lead. Again, we'll use that wizard as an example. That's a character that I rolled the stats for, and I built the whole character sheet up for because I wanted to. And then let's build the minions around that enemy. Again, I'm kind of going all over the place, but this is kind of how I build worlds and how I kind of build my campaigns and things. I don't really sit still and kind of focus too heavily on one thing. My mind goes all over the place, and, as we're talking, something may be like, oh, hey, that's a good idea. Let's write that down and add that in. So that's sort of where I would say if you're brand new to it, you don't need to have Incarnate, you don't need to build crazy maps like this, you don't need World Anvil to do anything like this. All you really need is a pen and paper. You could do a Google Drive document if you really want to, but it's just a notebook with a couple of quick notes for what you want to have. Maybe you do a hand-drawn map. Like I told you, there's that whole big dwarven city that's like a main focus of part of the campaign. Let me see what I have. I think I started to draw it, and then I stopped. Do I have that? Yeah. Here, I'll show you guys. I started to draw this is my map of the city. That's all I got. There's where you come in, and here's how you leave to go out. And that's all I drew. I didn't fill in any of that because I just ran out of time. I don't have the time I wish I had. I'm a dad now. I have 2 kids. I work. My job's a lot more difficult than my previous positions, so I'm busier with work and stuff. So I don't get to do as much world building as I'd like to. So, as long as you have a general... And let me stop for a second. Here's another thing. And this is sort of a public speaking presentation topic that you can bring into your D&D campaign. No one knows you're messing up, or you didn't do the thing that you wanted to do, or you said the wrong thing, unless you tell them. They don't need to know that you had planned, oh shit, I wanted to put this NPC there, or have this thing happen, or I wanted to say this, but I said that. They only know that that's the case if you tell them that that's the case. So, fake it till you make it. If you say something and you flat out said the wrong thing, sure, you could be like, hold up guys, I didn't mean that, backpedal, and try to work your way around that. But more often than not, it's almost more fun if you just let it go and roll with it, because sometimes that's how the best sessions and things happen, is something you weren't expecting, or you said the wrong thing, and now you just got to deal with it. And it could make for an even more interesting game. But yeah, like I said, they won't know you failed or you did the wrong thing or whatever unless you tell them. They only know what you tell them. You're the crafter of the world and building all that stuff out. So, just enjoy it. And again, like I said, fake it till you make it. Alright, so I've been talking for about an hour now. I'm just rambling of a madman here. So let me come back to, it looks like we have a fair few of you in the chat. So, what do you guys, let's talk about a couple things. Do you have any questions for me? Questions you want to ask? about world building, about my campaign or otherwise. So 1, do you have any questions is the base thing. 2, what do you want to get out of this stream going forward? Whether it be tonight or in a future stream, what would you like to see come from this? Because this is a complete experiment. I've never done this before. You know, a completely made up world. Always love that side. Yeah, you're right. Fake it till you make it in a completely made up world. You're right. Let's see. I'm trying to see, did we get anything else on the internet from anybody else suggesting things? I would love to see how you made the map. Okay. Listen, this is what I'm talking about. This is our time together to do whatever we want to do. You know, I unfortunately, I used to have a really long-running campaign on Monday nights that ended. There's going to be one-shots in the future. I did a fun little mini campaign with Greg in the chat of his campaign, his game Glitter Hearts, Magical Girl, you know, RPG, non-Dungeons and Dragons, and I needed to fill the Monday night slot on the channel. So I said, what do I need to do? I said, maybe we'll do world building. If this goes well and we like this, we'll keep doing this. If not, maybe I'll come up with something else and maybe we'll all play video games together. I don't know. Or maybe we'll, I don't know, maybe I'll find another campaign to run. So, we have a question here. So you can see right here, let's build a map. So if I go to create, you'll see standard, SD/1X, or Pro HD/2X. If you have the standard version, you'll only see this. I have the Pro version, which I think is only like $35 a year. So it's not like a huge investment. I'm sorry, Greg. So this is the base what you see on the map. You'll just see a water escape. And then here's where you can add and subtract. So if I hit add, you can see I can draw like this, right? So we're going to subtract. We're going to make this as big as possible. We're going to start fresh. So I'm just clicking right now and dragging to make this happen. Okay. So if I go back to add, you can see this is what I've got. And I can use this little sliding tool to get really fine or as large as we want to make it. And if I click this little brush tool here, you can see it'll tell you, do you want to build it in the foreground or the background? And then what do you want to, so we'll just choose foreground and we can see all of these different textures that we have. So if we go to say the stone texture, now, give it a second to catch up here. Maybe. Okay, so that's not where, oh, I see. Here we go. So I forgot. I haven't done this in a while. So basically what you need to do is you need to build a base map section with the add function, and then you could add the textures on top of it. So we're gonna go here to add. So let's build a little island here. We'll build this little circular-ish island in the middle of the water here. And then we could go here and see we could build all sorts of stone on our little island if we wanted to. And we could say, okay, what do we got? Maybe we have, I don't know, some grass over here. Oh boy, that is laggy. But you can see, there we go. So now we have a little bit of grass, we have some stone. And this is a very basic, and again, we can go as crazy as you want with this. You could be like, well, I don't like that the map's this around. So let's subtract a little bit here. So we can make this a little, you know, maybe there's a little river that comes inside here. Or you could go real small. Maybe there's a tiny little river over here. And over here. You know, whatever you want to do, you can subtract and add as much as you want. And then we could go here to adding the objects here. And now you can see we have a massive list of things. Well, maybe we want to put a bridge. A real big bridge. Over top of that river we just made. But we can go here and delete it, push it to front to back. Or we can hit the scaling button and maybe the bridge is way smaller. Maybe the bridge is huge. We can play around with this to get what we want. We don't want to add a bridge up here though, so we're going to delete that. Now, what else do we want to add? Maybe there's a dinosaur bone right here. Big dinosaur died. Big stegosaurus carcass right there on this island. And let's see, what else should we add in here? Let's put a dragon flying over here. And we'll put in a desert temple right there, but that's too big, so we're going to shrink down our temple. About that big, right? So this is, again, just a very generic thing that we've done here, right? So then we can go here and we want to add some, what is this, patterns. So we can see we have these different options here. So maybe we want to put some pine trees in the forest here. So right now I have it at 45%. If I drag this, you'll see it'll just start putting trees here. Now maybe that's too small. We want to make the trees a little bit bigger, and I can just click and drag. And we could add, so we could add trees wherever we want, but out here in the water it doesn't really make any sense. So we can select these trees, and we can delete as many trees as we want. It's not a precise, it's not a 100% precise tool. As you can see, I'm going to delete some out of the middle there. We can also do the same thing with, say, buildings. If we make these buildings smaller around our desert... Oh, do we have desert buildings? We do. So let's go ahead and put some other desert buildings around our desert temple. Alright, so here's our little desert island. And then maybe over here, there's some orc towns. Is that one? Do we have that here? No. Maybe down here in the south, it's a bunch of cherry blossoms. Over here in this area. Again, I'm just messing around with Incarnate here. Anybody can do what I'm doing. This is obviously a wonky, really weird town, and it's a fantasy world, though, so maybe this is the kind of climate you can have. A desert in the north, cherry blossoms blooming in the south. It's worked paver stone in the middle of the island where the big Stegosaurus carcass is, and then it's a forest on the bottom right-hand side. I don't know. Let's throw in some mountains, maybe? How about some rocky mountains right here? Gonna put a little rocky mountain area through our stone, kind of all around our carcass here. And, you know, now we have a very basic... I mean, the story behind this city, or this continent, is pretty interesting, I have to say, based on what we've built out here. Let's add... we'll add a village over here in the woods. Right? Now, something to think about, if you are building something like this, do you want to get down to the level of having the houses on it? Maybe you don't want to have the houses on your island, because then it shows that, like, if you start thinking about scaling... So if we removed all of the, you know, the structures and just left this island could be as big as you want it to be, right? Like, the scale could be, this could be, you know, 5 miles across. This could be 5,000 miles across. No one knows the scale of your little island that we made until you define it. You could also not define the scale at all and then just make it up as you go. Part of the things you want to think about, though, is I would typically recommend, if you're going to be planning to print out these maps to hand them to your players, a scale is important, because they're going to want to sit there and try to determine possibly, like, how far is it from here to here, and figure out how many days travel that's going to be, and that kind of thing. So we could go here to the text tool and place some text right here. We could call this, I don't know, it could be a very small island and a tiny dragon. You're right. This could be I don't know, Stegoland. And then we could take and move our, this could be the name of the whole continent. It could be the area right here, and we could turn it, you know, however we want to do it. And then you can see, you can start adding in this. You could shrink down the size of the text as low as you want it. You could go back here and do to the objects and then add something like a marker, right? We could put the marker right here. Maybe there's a town right there. We'll push that to the front. You know, there's a marker. Abstracting it. See, listen, these are all things that you could do. You get the point, though. I mean, we spent maybe 5-10 minutes building this crazy little island in the middle of nowhere. Or, you know, maybe it's not an island, right? Maybe there's a larger continent around it, and we could build that out. Maybe this is an island in the middle of the lake on a larger continent. We're really only limited by the space here. And that's something I do want to point out. I'm not a huge fan of Incarnate. You are limited to this square. So the problem is, you can't, like, if you start building, like, over here on this side, you can't scroll and move the window. It is limited to what you see here. So when you see how I built, like, that big world map and stuff like that, I had to zoom in real tiny and work with very fine, like, mouse strokes to get, like, a little island up here and something little down here, because this is the limited size you have. So right now, this could be our main continent that for our map. Again, we could build something larger around it, and then maybe we'd have to build another map that was way zoomed out to show the whole world. That's sort of the downside of Incarnate, is, like, if I start going like this, like over here, let's build that a little bit bigger. If I start going like, oops, let's subtract. If I start building over here, I can't scroll off the screen. I'm stuck with this corner. So I could, like, if I built, like, this little, like, say a little peninsula over here, right? You'll never know where this goes, because I'd have to build another map. And you could, you know, theoretically build maps square by square and, like, print one and then build it out to make a bigger overarching map. But that's why I did two. I made Everin the full size of the map, and then I zoomed it out and made the continents and stuff like that. So that's my biggest detractor of Incarnate. Again, you can do a ton of stuff for free, so keep that in mind. You also have a couple other tools here, right? This is the grid section. So if you wanted to add a grid, so we could add opacity. So here's a hex grid, and what size do you want the hexes to be, right? So we could do that. We could add a square grid if you wanted. So you could kind of use this if you wanted to make a more tactical map. There are better tools out there for making tactical maps for, like, your actual gameplay. I would not recommend using Incarnate because it doesn't really have a snap feature where you can snap to the grid. So I would choose to not use that if I were you. Then you have a notes section where you could place something here, and, like, you could type whatever you want here and leave it, and that's there. And you could click on your little note thing and it'll pull up whatever your notes are. So this is less for the players and more for you to keep track of different locations where you could put, like, party location. I think the features behind World Anvil are going to be better than this, but and then here's the zoom feature, right? So if you wanted to really work in this particular little area and draw something else, what would I use for tactical maps? I will show you. There's a bunch of programs. You could do a lot of stuff. You could do it in Roll20 if you really wanted. Roll20 is mostly free for the most part. You could do it in there, but I have a preferred tool that I will show you. And then again, there are key bindings, so if you want to do hotkeys for building this out, if you really want to get crazy into this, you have that option. And here's the settings. Save that. We'll just call this, what are we calling this? Orthonet Island. Sure. And you can put whatever description you want there. And then you can go here and click save. And then you'll get a little polyhedral thing popping up on the screen. So that's the thing. And then if I wanted to export this map, I could click this and you'll see it'll pop up right here. And now we have our map. So we could print this out if we wanted to, or do whatever we wanted to add this in. To take it to a printer, print it off on your computer here, you know, whatever you want to do. So, all right, you want to talk about tactical maps. There's another program that I prefer called Dungeon Fog. So Dungeon Fog, it was a Kickstarter. They did recently make this thing I told you about, Project Dios, which is linked into World Anvil, which is a world building map. So we'll build the map in Dungeon Fog, but what's really cool about Dungeon Fog is people can share their own maps, and you can import them into your game and tweak them. So you can see World Anvil, there's all these other partners that they have. The Great DM, Foundry Virtual Tabletop. So let's see if I have any maps. Did I build any maps? No, I just took one. So I have my campaigns. So here are public maps, right? Like I said, if you want to see other people's maps. Here's a Critical Role map. Reconstructed. Like, those are options if you wanted to do that. And you can see there's all manner of things. You could go nuts just scrolling through these, finding other people's maps. Here's my asset gallery. So I was one of the original Kickstarter backers. I did a lot of reviews and stuff for people. So I have access to certain things that you may never have access to, because I have, not that I'm trying to brag in that respect, but I have like certain textures and assets because of my, say like I can add different textures, and I have all these different, you'll see all the little crowns because I was an initial Kickstarter backer. But I think you can actually use this to be a virtual tabletop as well. Let's see here. They have a full forum, right, where you can go. See, here's Project Dios. It's a special tool. That's a very pretty cool Kickstarter if you go and check that out. And because I'm a lifetime member of Dungeon Fog, Dungeon Fog has a lot of different options for what you can do. And you can see you can get all these different things if you come in and claim at different times. You can get unique badges and textures and things. Inviting a friend, you'll get you other stuff. So there's a ton of things you can do with this, but let's actually get into something. They do have a really good forum and a technical team if you have specific questions. So this is actually somebody else's map that I had took and imported into my old, my own game. So if we zoom out here. This is, let's see, where do we, and you can see you get all sorts of different tools here. So let's zoom ourselves out to 70%. Let's go out a little bit further than that. So here is a tavern map that they had built, and you can see the different assets of the tavern here. And we can choose, you know, you could, everything is all in here. And maybe it'll just be easier if we build one. You know what? Let's just go build one. How about that? You can also do things like add GM notes to the thing as well, so you can add in functionality for you to see stuff that you want to have for, let's say, character stat blocks and all sorts of things like that. You can link it into a greater campaign. I'm pretty sure, like I said, you can do a virtual tabletop in it. Let's build a new map. We'll call it whatever that is. Grid size 70. You know what? Map size in units. All right, we'll just go with this. We'll go with whatever the base thing they gave us was. We'll see what we can make. So here's our little map that we have. We've got grass on it. That's fine. What do we want to build, guys? You want to build a house? Let's build a house. Okay, so we're gonna draw a room. Here's our floor and our wall type. And you can see we could change this. So let's go ahead and we'll build a house. So we're gonna go here, here, click, here, here, here. Now we have a room. That was easy, right? We just built a whole room. I just did 4 clicks, and that was it. Okay, what do we want to add to our room? Do we want to paint the room a different color? Do we want to add some assets to the room? Let's go to our fantasy assets. Let's throw in a barrel. How about right there? Oh, there's a water barrel in the corner over here. There's a long crate over here. And then, do we want to rotate? Let's see. We can mirror that if we wanted to. Let's go here. We'll select our crate. And I don't know if we can, yeah, here, we'll go here. We could change the color of our crate, whatever we wanted to do with that. We could rotate the crate 90 degrees if we wanted, or 960 degrees in that case. How about we add a door, right? We should probably have a door to get into our house that we just bid. So let's go fantasy doors. We want a, what kind of door do we want? How about a wooden door? We're gonna put it right here. There you go. We're gonna put a dungeon door over here. There you go. Now the door is ajar. And now we just added in the door. Well, maybe we want to add... Let's see. General. Let's add some windows, right? We should have a window in our house. We can't just put a window here. And I want to put a window here. I want to have a barred window over on this side. Sure, why not? We could freeform draw. I mean, we just built like a house. That was pretty easy. What do we got here? Oh, we could add tokens if we wanted. Do we want to paint our room? See, we have all these different tools and things. Maybe it's a lava house. What do we think about that? Why not, right? Lava house. Like, that was how easy I just changed the texture of the floor. But realistically, it's probably not a lava house. But you can get the picture, right? I mean, we could go crazy here. Let's have fossil-like floors in our house. There we go. Fossil floors in our house. Let's add some more props. What do we want to add? What do I have as far as achievement or reward props? Cthulhu? Sure. Cthulhu hangs out outside our house over there. And there's a Kraken over there. Kraken head popping up out of the ground. We could put all sorts of weapons inside here. Oh, here's a dead chick. Looks like she's got her chest burst open. She's hanging out over there. What else we got? They are great neighbors. Here's our round hatch on our floor here. A big drain for the ritual sacrifice in the middle of our house here. But you get the point. You know, I'm going a little crazy on building this out, but this is the kind of functionality you have with Dungeon Fog. We could add different layers. So let's see. So we could do lighting too, right? Let's mess with the lighting. So we can darken things if we want. We can change the lighting just in the room, so we could do Fog of War that way if we wanted. It's a little darker. It's bright outside. We could cast, we could do, let's see, do we do anything with the shadow? Can you give us anything? No. Yeah, we have it. All right, so we have to do stuff outside. Here we go. We can change our light source, where things are going from. You know, you can do all sorts of crazy stuff with this. We could just freeform draw if we wanted. We could do different layers too. If we wanted, we could build things on top of one another. Listen, I mean, we have our great town, our great continent with the giant stegosaurus carcass and the cherry blossoms. Maybe this is one of the town in the forest on the right-hand side. I don't use Dungeon Fog as much as I should. I have a lifetime membership, so I don't feel bad about it. But you saw how easy it is to just draw maps and stuff. You could go nuts by drawing, you know, a full dungeon however you want. And then again, you can see what assets. I think if I click at this, it'll show us what we've used, if I recall. Let's see. So this will pull up the list of assets that we have. We could put in our GM notes, right? If we wanted to type something up specifically. Let me see if I can get this to work. So we could choose to say, all right, we want to type in whatever we want to have there. And then we could be running, we could print it right off here if we wanted to. We could export this out. And we could export it as a couple of different things. We could save it and upload it to the to Dungeon Fog so other people could download this if they wanted. And then I think if we do with a campaign, you can create a campaign on here and just store your maps all within one campaign. So that's a little bit of a, you know, how I would build tactical maps if I was building tactical maps. So we go back to here. you can see, like, so when I wanted to build zoomed in maps of different areas, so here, like, I started to do a Bricken's homestead for my homebrew campaign, and it's just a pain in the ass to try to build, like, how the scaling, right? Let's see if this loads. So, like, I started to build it, and you can see, like, I kind of gave up on it, building out the full town this way. And I just had, like, I don't know, it just wasn't clicking in my mind at the moment. So then I was thinking, like, do I try to build the town like that as a tactical map using Dungeon Fog? Because maybe that would be the way to go. And I never revisited it, but, like, here is a zoomed in area of the map, right, to the further south of my homebrew campaign. Pull this up here. Give it a sec. So here is some areas in the south, right? So I zoomed in part of the map because, like, a lot of this stuff you wouldn't see on the greater map because they're regional cities. So, what else? We got questions. We got some more people hanging out in the chat. We went over Incarnate. We built a small little map. We went over Dungeon Fog, and we built the tactical map. We went over a little bit idea of high-level concept of world building. We talked a little bit about World Anvil and what you could do there. I don't know. What else do we want to talk about? We talked a little bit about how, what I build when I build some of my cities. We talked a little bit about, the template and information that I like to have. What other questions do you guys have for me? Whether it be world building based or, because I have something I think we could do that might be fun, but I want to make sure I address anybody that has any questions in the chat. And obviously we could do further in depth. And I will also say one thing I do want to point out about Incarnate. Their social media presence is really good. So if we go over to Twitter and go over to Incarnate's Twitter, they are really good about posting stuff. Like, they'll post people's maps, right? And that's like, so like, here's a map, right? That somebody did. And you saw my maps, like, but look at how intricate they made their map. You can see, like, all of these little tracks. Like, so Incarnate is an art, I will say. Like, you can see, like, look at how intricate this is and how, like, who knows what the scale is for this area. But look at this. Somebody made a town map, like a really zoomed in town map of a market. And, like, again, we're all using that same square, but you can see how crazy in depth you could get if you really zoom it in. Again, right, here's a little valley. Here's a larger world map that somebody made, right? You can see how crazy they went in depth with theirs. Look at the size of the tiny little trees. Again, another big map. And you can see, again, they're all based on that standard square that we talked about, but, like, what's up here on this person's map? They need to expand it out further. Again, here's the east mouth of this particular city this person built. Like, so you can see you can go pretty nuts when you're building things. It just really, you're really limited to how much you want to spend with it. Look at this. This is a map that somebody made. Like, this doesn't even look like a map, really. I mean, it does. It's like a really zoomed out map. How to give your map a parchment look, right? Like, all sorts of stuff. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's go back to your question in the chat. What advice would you give new players to help the game run easier for the DM running it? Know your character. That's a very basic one. Like, I realize it's for new players, but, like, something I feel like you don't need to worry about what other characters' abilities are. Like, as long as you kind of get the core concept, and again, obviously people are going to have questions, but, like, when it comes to your turn, know what your character can do on your turn, and start thinking about what you're going to do on your turn before it, like, and I'm only talking combat at this point, really, but before it gets to your turn, have in your head what you're going to do. Obviously, you may need to change that on the fly based on things that happen during the rounds of combat before your turn. but nothing makes the game harder for a DM to run and slows everything down than when somebody's just like, it gets to their turn and they're not paying attention, and you have to like, hey, focus up, and they're like, huh, what? Oh, wait, what happened? Are those guys dead? Oh, wait, that guy's dead? Oh, he's okay. Holy, how many hit points do you have? And they basically, you just need to retell the entire round of combat because they just checked out. That's a super simple way for players to make the games easier on the DM, is that if people are just keeping, like, if they're in it mentally in the headspace, that's a big help, I would say. Okay, Gut Roach, I've got yours. We've definitely got things to do. Hello, how we roll. We've got some good folks here in the chat. As far as other things to help, and again, everybody else, feel free to sound off on ideas for new players to help make the game easier for a DM to run it. I would also say talking to your players is a huge one. You sit down at the table for the first game. Hey guys, I'm a new DM. Like, maybe I don't know if your players are new players. It says they're new players. So they're new players. So have a conversation with them. Hey guys, I know you're all new. Let's be realistic about what we expect to get out of this game. It's going to be a fun game for friends, hanging out. We'll learn the rules as we go. We'll keep it rules light. We're going to have fun. Or like, this is a rules lawyer's game. This is how he is. Show up and know your shit. Whatever the case may be. But like, you got to keep the players involved. And I feel like if you do a good job as the DM of keeping them invested and making sure they feel heard, and you're giving them the experience they want, they're going to give you more as the DM to incorporate into your game. So that's a thing that I would say too as well. I mean, they're new players. Again, our comment about fake it till you make it from the beginning. If they're all brand new, they don't know that you're doing anything wrong unless you tell them that you're doing it wrong. So you can feel free to just, and I mean, I don't know your personality, Craven, so I don't know how you handle like people throwing a bunch of stuff at you all at once. So they're new players. Maybe you have that conversation like, okay, here's how we're gonna handle this, or whatever the case may be. You may say, hey guys, you're all new. Maybe don't play a spellcaster or a crazy like a wizard, because it's gonna be a lot for you to work on. And keeping track of spells is difficult. I mean, it really all depends on the group of people, and as long as everybody's sitting down to have a good time, and at the end of the day people want to come back and play again, and they had fun, then you're doing your job, they're having a good time, and that's really what everybody wants. I'm the newest player in this situation. Okay, Craven Wolf, well, there you go. Talk to your DM. Hey man, listen, I'm relatively new to the game. What can I do to help make your experience better? And honestly, that would, if I sat down at a table as a DM to run a game and a player came and had that conversation with me, that would be so refreshing. Hey, listen, I'm new, but I want to be good. I want to do things well. What can I do? They may have advice. Hey man, I really want to go in this direction with the story. Do you think your character could be the avenue for that? Maybe we could talk about your character and how I can work in your backstory into the game. Let's have this conversation. And then I may say, well, what are you looking for out of the game? What do you want in your D&D experience? How can I help give you that? For new players, show them Seth Skorkowski's YouTube video called The Edgelord. Basically explains, don't be an asshole loner. Think Batman. The character is not fun to play. Most of us roll that guy as our first character. I'm guilty of that, yep. As a DM, I just want the players to do something. Don't ask, just do, and my job is to see if that's possible. Yeah, again, all great comments. Right, exactly. No one, and I've run games and I've played games, and everybody is agreeing. If there's one person that's just ruining the party, like, we all want to play the game. Like, I know there's no real wrong way to play D&D, but we want to play the game. If you make it so we can't play the game because of your decisions, there's a reason Batman never joined the Justice League, like, officially. Because they're all trying to do their thing, and he's like, no, I'm just doing my own thing, whatever. But they're right, though. Everyone's right. Have fun, make it... Especially if you're new to the game, like, we don't want to have, like... I'm not saying you can't have like contentious moments with other players, but like player versus player combat, like we want to play the game, you know. But yeah, as a new player, if you sat down and told me, hey, what can I do? My biggest thing would be like, know what you can do on your turn, you know? Does your character have bonus action things they can do on a turn? Do they have action things they can do on a turn? Can they do stuff as a reaction? Because combat is fun, but it's the longest part of Dungeons and Dragons. And, you know, if I have to keep reminding you what's going on in the game, again, obviously excuses for first players, sure, but like being focused in the game. I know other DMs, depending on what the long-term campaign scenario is, if you take good notes, that's a nice boon for the DM, especially if the DM's like had to make something up on the fly and they forget to write down the name of the NPC that you created on the DM created on the fly, and you're like, oh, you're talking about so and so, this person. The DM will be like, oh my god, thank you so much, I forgot their name. Or if you're even if you're not really taking notes, but you look like you're taking notes, then I feel like as a DM, I feel like, oh, cool, they're interested enough to take notes in what I'm saying. Whereas, like, I have players that just doodle, and I'm like, you are not paying attention to me at all. You're doodling on your notebook. So, couple thoughts. All right, let's go back. Gutroach, do you consider homebrew items such enemies as part of world building? And if so, do you have tools and tips to build them? Yep, Double Book, pay attention to your HP and your XP. If your DM's running with experience points, keep an eye on that. Oh, to that point, level up your character. If you end the session at the end of the last session where you level up or something like that, please have your character leveled up and ready to go for the next session. I get this all the time in my games. 3 out of the 4 players, or will have their character, like, will level up and the characters will be all ready to go. I will sit down at the table ready to play, and then one person will be like, oh crap, I forgot to level my character. And then we gotta wait for them to level their character, or we'll start the campaign or start the session, and they haven't leveled their character. So they're not paying attention while the game is starting because they're busy leveling their character. Let's see. Yes. See that? There you go. That 4th player's an asshole. We make them play as a level behind. That'll get them. That'll convince them to make sure they do that stuff. Yeah. Don't take time away from the game to make a pet. Yeah, I mean, really, it's. I don't know what your scenario is like. For me, I stream games, so we sit down. We have about 3 hours every week to play a game. I have 3 hours with you guys to play a game. Let's play the game for the 3 hours. You know what I mean? But you know what I mean? Like, I think Gutroach. I mean, can we expand a little bit on the pet concept? But I think it's like, oh yeah, my character has a pet dog, and then they sit there and they build out a whole backstory for their character, for their pet. That's my guess. I could be wrong. But then, yeah, Uchiha, could you comment on the idea of, well, I mean, it sounds like that's from personal experience, that's happened at your table. So I'd love to hear that story about what happened where someone built a pet at the table. So please, give us a little feedback on that, but I'll keep going. But yeah, to make a familiar, great. Yeah, a familiar, okay. Took 2 hours to make a familiar. That's a yes. That's a, you know what I mean? Like, it's a minor piece in the grand story of the campaign, but if it delayed your game for 2 hours, I've been there, man. Believe me, I've been there. This hasn't been since I've been streaming, because when we sit down to stream, right, like, we're here to play a game, and we're here to entertain folks on the internet, so we're like, we gotta be in it. But, like, I've absolutely been in sessions where it's, like, me and a bunch of friends, and we're hanging out on a weekend, and we've got, like, a 10 to 12 hour session planned, and, like, the game just sidetracks for 2 hours, and there's, like, 1 or 2 of us are like, I want to play the game. And everybody else is like, no, let's talk about politics. You guys want to go get food? Do we have any beer? And, like, all important things, don't get me wrong. Except for maybe the politics discussion. This shouldn't come to the D&D table. But, like, all that's happening. And it's just like, I'm just sitting there and I'm like, oh my god, guys, we get together once a month maybe, and like some of you guys are already a couple beers in. Like, I want to just play the game. Just want to play the game. And then that just like, it kills everything, you know? So that's why I try to play games on stream mostly, because people who get, like, most people get it. We're here to entertain people. We're here for 2 hours. We're here for 3 hours. Let's sit down and play. So anyway, back to your point, Gutroach, about homebrew items and enemies as part of world building. Yes, if you know anything about me, I love magic items. I love magic items immensely. I build magic items constantly. I'm always coming up with homebrew magic items. I will often, as I was saying earlier, I'll often come up either with a character concept and that'll become an enemy, or I'll build a magic item, and then I'll think about an encounter to build around that. So here's a good example I did from a previous campaign I ran. I think this is a pretty good example. So the players went into a town, and they'd interacted with this town on a couple of occasions, right? It was like a really shitty noble town. It was basically where all of the high class nobles of the majors. It was all the major like nobles of Waterdeep, and this was the nearby town of Amphale. And I had Amphale in my game, was where like all of the high class nobles in Waterdeep sent their bratty kids, because like, we can't have you in the city of Waterdeep messing up our social affairs. Let's send you basically to this other town, and you guys can live in our mansions over in Amphale. That way it gets you out of the city. So like, imagine a city of just like the worst snotty preppy teenage kids of nobles who just don't want to have them there. That's like the majority of the people who live in this town. And like, they're really known for like their breeding of horses, so it's not a great place to be. The party had gone there. They had done some weird interactions. They had not liked the snooty people. People got arrested. Then they went back, and then like some rogues that they encountered that stole a bunch of their stuff were like, now the rogues were living there, and they said they were going to be the protectors, but like, they were just fencing stuff. And then they went back there even later and found out that like, most of the city had been killed by apparently this crazy powerful wizard. And this crazy wizard was like, don't speak about her. If you speak anything, she is like a super powerful wizard. If you speak ill of her, she'll use power word kill on you. And like, the party is like, oh my god, what are we gonna do? This is like, none of us have more than 100 hit points. We'll get killed by power word kill. How are we gonna do this? So how are we gotta figure out what we're gonna do. How are we gonna take down this wizard and rescue the town? So they find out like, it's like the main building in the town. That's where this wizard with power word kill is. We're gonna take her out. So they pray to Mistra, goddess of magic, for aid. And then the cleric rolls like a 9, and his level is 12, so he gets divine intervention. And they go to like take her on, and they walk in, and they see her like basically at the edge, like sitting on a throne at the end of a long hallway. And like, they walk down this hallway, and through Mistra's protection from this divine intervention that the cleric managed to roll on, like a series of like 15 like crazily decimating traps go off, but are stopped by Mistra's blessing, right? So they get like swinging blades and, you know, crushing things and arrows and all this stuff. So they walk through, Mistra protecting them from all of that. And they get to the wizard at the end, and they see she's sitting, she's got like a hood and a robe up, and she just like is looking at them and stands up and begins to approach the party. And at this point, it is a Arcana cleric, a paladin, ancients paladin, and a warlock. No, it was a blade singer, swashbuckler, I think was the combo. So she starts walking towards them, and the cleric's like, their whole plan was they were going to get in there, they were going to cast silence, so the wizard couldn't cast any spells, and then they were going to just like fuck her up with force of arms. So they cast silence on it, and then the wizard pulls back her hood, and she takes her staff that she had, her walking cane, or wizard staff, and smiles and twists the bottom half of it, and from this head of this staff erupts an axe head made of pure lightning, and she runs in and just starts attacking them and just destroying them. And it turns out that this wizard is a barbarian, is a bear totem barbarian wielding what was basically the equivalent of a flame tongue great axe, but instead of a flame tongue, it was lightning based, and the head was made of lightning and wasn't there when you didn't see it. And basically she just starts destroying them. They eventually manage to defeat her, and they find out that inscribed in the side of the stick of this lightning tongue great axe is the word power word kill. So this barbarian, she was a capturer of all sorts of magic items, and she thought, because she could wield all these cool magic items, that she was a wizard. And anytime anyone questioned her and said she wasn't a wizard, she would brutally murder them. So she had terrified the entire town into calling her a wizard, and she said she would use power word kill on them, which was the name of her axe. And just the look, I came up with that idea for the axe named power word kill, and then I built a whole encounter around it. And that was an example of a homebrew magic item becoming a function of the world. A whole encounter was built around it. And I just thought that was a really fun time, and the players still talk about it because it really messed with their head. She had a cape of the Montebank, right? She had magic items that let her do wizardly things. She had a gauntlet of blasting, so she could cast Scorching Ray. She could Dimension Door with the cloak. She had different things that would let her cast certain spells. But her main thing was power word kill the lightning tongue great axe. So that was a good example, I guess I'd say, of that was a very long-winded story. But that's, if you know anything about me, that's how I am. So a long-winded story to explain homebrew magic items can be fun in the world-building process. As far as templates and things for building homebrew magic items, one thing I say is a great way to go about it is look at existing magic items that are out there that already exist in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Because I'd say for the majority of them, they're relatively well-balanced. And see what you can do about taking something from there and applying it in a different way. So you make a unique homebrew magic item, but instead of it being what it was, it's now something cool. So let's go to D&D Beyond, and we'll do that. So here's a really, we already talked about the idea of the flame or the lightning tongue, but let's go here, right? So here's we'll go to a flame tongue. So a flame tongue is typically any sword, right? You speak a bonus action, it becomes wreathed in flames, sheds bright light, and it does an extra 2d6 fire damage on a hit. Well, why don't we make it a flame tongue whip, right? Now we take a whip, which does a d4 damage, and now we can activate it. Now we can have a cool whip that's on fire, and now it's a whip that does 2d6 damage. It has all the benefits that a whip has, but just with extra damage. Something super simple, but that made a whole new cool homebrew magic item, the flame tongue whip, right? Or do what I did, change the damage. It's not a flame tongue, it's a lightning tongue, or it's an acid tongue, or whatever you want it to be. Another one that I like, because I hate the Mace of Disruption as a mace, but I love what it does. So I love applying the effects of the Mace of Disruption to another weapon. So when you hit a fiend or an undead with this magic weapon, you can they take an extra 2d6 radiant damage. If they have 25 hit points or fewer after taking it, they must make a DC 15 Wisdom save or be destroyed. Even on a success, they're frightened until the end of your next turn, and it sheds light. I hate maces. Maces I don't really like them as a weapon. They do a d6. But you could take the Mace of Disruption's abilities and apply it to any other weapon, and it would be a super cool magic item. A long sword of disruption. Again, you could do the whip. That's how when I built Simon Belmont from Castlevania as a 5th edition character, I just basically took the Mace of Disruption's abilities and put it on a +3 whip, and then I called it the Vampire Killer Whip, and I called it a day. Something simple like that. Another thing you can think about when you're trying to build magic items is class features, right? Class features and feats, right? So feats in Dungeons and Dragons or class features in Dungeons and Dragons from other classes. Maybe there's a magic item that gives you basically the equivalency of a feat or something like a feat. Like, you know how Sharpshooter, the feat lets you attack at maximum range with a ranged weapon without suffering disadvantage? Maybe there's a magic item that it's a bow that gives you that feature. This bow can attack at long range without incurring disadvantage. That could be something really simple, right? You know, giving people an aspect of it. Maybe there's a great sword that gives you the equivalency of Great Weapon Master, and you don't have to take the feat. It's a pretty powerful sword, don't get me wrong. But, like, maybe that's a weapon. Maybe that's something that exists in your world. Something really simple. We have items that set your strength score to something. The Gauntlets of Overpower, the Belts of Giant Strength. The Headband of Intellect sets your intelligence at 19. Belt of Dwarvenkind boosts your constitution by 2. Amulet of Health sets your constitution at 19. We don't have an item that sets your dexterity at 19. We don't have an item that sets your charisma at 19. We don't have an item that sets your wisdom at 19. That's 3 really simple, easy magic items you could make that everybody would appreciate to have in your game. Something real simple like that. We have a Wand of Fireball. We have a Wand of Magic Missile. We have a Wand of Lightning Bolts. Why don't we have a wand? We have a Wand of Polymorph. We have a Wand of, I think, like Detect Magic. We could make wands of every other kind of spell that you want to have. Why not? You know, a Wand of Burning Hands. Has so many charges, lets you cast Burning Hands at a DC 15. You know, Wand of Ice Knife. You know what I mean? Like, these are all things you could do. Another really simple thing is to make an item that gives someone access to a cantrip. Cantrips are not super overpowered, but they can go a long way. Like a vest. I gave somebody a vest that gave them Prestidigitation. Or a wand that lets you cast Mending, right? Not crazy, but you could do a lot with Prestidigitation. You could do a lot with Mending. Those 2 simple cantrips could really expand someone's play in the game. Oh, hey, wait, I can spice up that food, or I can heat up that food. I have Prestidigitation from this fancy vest that I have. Stuff like that. A helmet to cast Thaumaturgy, exactly. Maybe you have a weapon that lets you cast, a sword that lets you cast Firebolt, the cantrip, right? And then you could flavor it that you point the sword at somebody and the Firebolt shoots out of the sword. That's cool. It's not overpowered, really, but maybe your players may love that. And then you kind of build a little bit around that that item. Maybe you give it a cool name, something like that, and then now all of a sudden, it's like it could be a whole big thing for them. Something else that gets overlooked a lot in the Dungeon Master Guide is the minor properties. See? Fantastic. Coolest magic item I ever got was a small trinket that let me cast message to one specific person, the sister trinket. I gave, I had one of my characters had a daughter in the game. Not my character, one of my players had a character who had a daughter in game. And they had basically, very similar to what you're saying, is basically like 2 halves of like a joint necklace that let them cast the sending spell to one another once a week. So sending lets you speak 25 words to anybody over the plane of existence. So once a week they could cast sending so they could stay in touch with each other once a week, right? You know, it's kind of the concept of like, call me once a week when you go away to college so I know that you're okay. And it was that kind of a thing, but through a sending kind of locket. Magic items, here we go. Yeah, a sword that makes no sound when used. That's super cool. You know, Silent Blade. That's fantastic. I mean, a rogue could use that for all sorts of things. That has 0, like, theoretical impact on the mechanics of the game. But maybe you could come up with a cool way where you could slit somebody's throat and it wouldn't make any sound, right? I gave somebody a pair of boots that on the bottom, the tracks went the other way, right? So you're wearing the boots, but when you walk, the footprints go the other direction. So it always looks like you're going away from where you're heading. Something real simple. But like, sometimes I feel like the simplest items like these players will gravitate towards them because they're so cool. Like, they do a unique, cool thing, and then, like, you come up with, like, one simple scenario, what you want it for, and your players will come up with things you never even thought of. And it becomes integral into their whole aspect. I gave one of my characters a doublet that let you once a day pull an item, like a piece of food out of it that you wanted. So, like, really want an apple pie, you reach into the pocket, boom, apple pie, right? You know, I really want just like an apple, or I really want an orange or a banana or a hamburger or whatever, and they could reach into the pocket and pull out that one particular item of food. And that was huge. They loved that stupid little thing. Like, today I learned the word doublet. Well, you know, I'm here to educate as best I can. Voice changer necklace, exactly. How do you make sure that magic items are dispersed evenly, fairly to the party? So this can be a tricky thing. One simple way to do about it is to, I mean, on the very, very basic level, is to have items that, like, you clearly gear it towards someone, right? Like, this particular item, like, maybe it only requires attunement by a paladin, and you have one paladin in the party. Clearly it's designed for them. But what I'd say one of the biggest things is to watch the party and watch the players. See if you can see, like, one of them is clearly outshining everybody else because they have a thing that you gave them, and you need to be aware of that and be able to make the decision, like, how am I going to handle this? Am I going to give everybody else something more powerful to make them on par with that player? Am I going to throw enemies at them that this particular item doesn't work against? It's tricky, because I love making magic items, and I love giving magic items to my players. So the problem with that is, if you're giving stuff out to players, you're going to have to increase the amount of enemies that they face, or the challenge rating of those enemies if you're giving other people stuff to elevate them. But you also don't want to make the player who has this really cool thing that you gave them feel like you're just shitting on them by giving them enemies that, like, you have this really cool sword that does necrotic damage, and I'm going to only throw enemies at you that are immune to necrotic damage so that you could never make use of it, so you're not overpowered. So it's hard to know. And I mean, sometimes it honestly comes down to just talking to your players like, hey guys, listen, I gave Joe that magic item and it is way too powerful. How do we want to handle this? And the other players would be like, they may be like, you know what? I don't really mind it. I think it's fine. He seems to have fun. Joe may come around and be like, listen, I get it. It's freaking awesome. But I understand that it's OP. Maybe we can adjust the set, like make it not as strong. Maybe we nerf it down. And it could be something as simple as like, all right, it did 2d6 extra damage. Maybe it only does 1d6 extra damage. And it could just be that conversation and we just change that. Or maybe it's something like I say, I want to change it. Do you trust me to come up with a story narrative reason why? And then that happens over the course of the game. Yeah, exactly. So I have a really good video that I put out about letting your players search for magic items. Let's see if I can pull it up while we're talking here. That I put out, which is basically that concept of asking your players what kind of magic items they want. And then that's also good content because it lets you build quests around it. Like, if your paladin wants a Holy Avenger, which, I mean, if you're a paladin, who doesn't want a Holy Avenger, right? But if you want one, maybe you sit down and have a discussion about, like, oh, well, maybe there was a legendary hero who had one, and he fell in a swamp filled with undead. And, like, that's a thing, and now you can build a whole quest and a whole thing all around that particular area. But you tell him he was a pretty powerful adventurer, he died doing it, you know? Okay, so you did see the video. Exactly, that's an option that you could do, right? One thing I was looking up here is something that I feel like gets overlooked a lot. Where is it? Magic items. Where is it? Special features? Yeah, okay. This section in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and there's definitely better resources, which I will link you guys to shortly. This whole section, you can really make things a lot better with the minor effects. So these things could, to some extent, who was it created or what was its intended use for the magic item, what's the kind of detail from its history, but these minor properties, right? Attuning this item takes 1 minute. This item gives you a +2 to initiative. It never gets dirty. It floats on the water and gives you advantage on strength checks to swim. Let's see. Whenever it's struck or used to strike a foe, a bear hears a fragment of an ancient song. Like, these kind of very simple things could go a long way to make an item very unique. Or it just could be something as simple as, like Ash had suggested, a sword that swings that makes no sound. I don't think I have my notebook that had it around here. No, I don't. It's upstairs. I had made an item for Jake in one of my old campaigns called Bloodthirst, and it was a sword made out of bone. And when he hit like a critical hit with it, you could feel the heartbeat of the person you were striking, like pulsating in the pommel of the sword. And like when you hit someone with a natural 20 or a critical hit with that, you absorbed some of their life force and it healed you. Like, that was a thing. And like, questionable moral sword for a paladin, probably, but he didn't think too much of it. So like, that was something simple. And it was just a cool idea for a sword, and like, it really made the thing unique. What other interesting items did I give out to people that they really liked? I'm trying to think. And it obviously depends on the players and the characters, what you want to give them. Like, I had given our druid in our original campaign special magic armor that let her use both of her wild shapes to transform into like a young green dragon. And that was like like, she could stay in that form until she got knocked out of it, or like half as long as her wild shape would last. And you could only do that every so often. She barely ever used it, but that was a thing that I gave her. I also really like the idea of legacy items, is what I like to call them. An item that the party may find very early on, or may even start the game with, that is very minor magically. And then as they level up and do cool things, you determine what these things are, and when they happen, the item gets better, or it unlocks abilities. And this way, they might start with like a cool piece of armor, or a cool shield, or a cool staff. And like at level 1, it might give you just the access to a cantrip, right? That's it. But then when they hit level 5 and they slay an enemy with it in physical combat, it now gives them a +1 to attack rolls and damage rolls with spells or something like that. And then it perpetually gets better and better and better as they level up. Yeah, I want an empty sword hilt for my Blade Singer for when he casts stuff like Shadow Blade. Also, another thing for homebrew magic items, combining existing magic items. So let's go here, and we'll go... where do we want to go? Where is it? Back one more. Yeah. So, weapon of warning, right? I made a bone dagger for a druid. It was his totem and his first kill in a fight for his life, so he honored the beast by using that and making the animal its only wild shape change. Later in the story, it was a chance to enchant the dagger. Exactly. Stuff like that. So here's a weapon of warning is a great item. I really like the weapon of warning. It's an attunement item. While your weapon is on your person, you have advantage on initiative rolls. In addition, you and your companions within 30 feet of you can't be surprised except when incapacitated by something other than non-magical sleep. The weapon magically awakens you and your companions within range if any of them are sleeping naturally when combat begins. This is a really cool item. It doesn't give you any benefit to attack or damage, so like a +1 weapon of warning could be something cool, right? Something very simple like that, giving a weapon that doesn't give you a bonus to attack and damage, a bonus to attack and damage. So that's something very simple that you could do. Maybe you add that thing that gives you a +2 to initiative, and make a +1 rapier of warning that gives a +2 to initiative. It's a pretty cool magic item. Most people will be happy to have that. You know, something real simple. Now, exactly. So, I mean, I would recommend checking out just, you know, and if you do have access to D&D Beyond, how do you get your players to use their magic items? A good question. I have had players, I've given out a lot of magic items in my time. So one of my problems that I'll come across is if I give out too many, then, you know, that I run the risk of them forgetting they have them, which clearly is this thing that you're saying. So sometimes it really comes down to... So I have the player we talked about before, you know, that player, you know, the one who doesn't level up and is doodling and not paying attention and all that stuff. That player, I know the way to get them to use their magic items is to only give them passive magic items. Ring of Protection, Cloak of Protection, Belt of Dwarven Kind, Amulet of Health. Things that just give them a static number that's just constantly added to things, and I know that's not the right answer, and I have other thoughts about that. But, like, static item boosts like that, that's good for a player who never uses it because it's something they don't have to think about. But some of the stuff I like to do when I give out cool magic items is I'll usually make that item pretty, you know, depending on the scenario, pretty tied to that character. So I have a barbarian in my game. It's the training wheels of the magic item world. Absolutely, right? If it's a +1 to AC and their AC just goes up, especially if they're using D&D Beyond, where you put it on their character sheet and it's always there. And their AC was a 17 and now it's an 18. That magic item will forever work for them because they will always know that they have it. So I have a barbarian in my Tuesday game named Rick the Brick. You know what? Why don't we go over here and take a look at our character sheets? How about that? You can do that too. Here's my homebrew campaign. So here's Rick the Brick. So I gave Rick a magic item. He's a barbarian. Items are a part of weapons are his character, right? That's the whole base of his character. So I gave him a magic weapon. So here, this is the current one he has. I was in a very Thor Ragnarok, or a Thor vibe. So Storm's Herald is a great axe with a lightning theme to it. So currently, this is one of those items that levels up as he goes. So it starts off as it's a +1 great axe. He will always use a +1 great axe because he's always going to use a weapon, right? He's a barbarian. It also has access to 2 spells. It can cast Lightning Bolt once a long rest, and a homebrew spell called Storm Surge once a long rest. He's a barbarian. He doesn't have a lot of AoE. If he needs range or AoE, he can throw out a Lightning Bolt. Granted, since I gave it to him, he's only used the Lightning Bolt one time, but he has it. Slippers of Spider Climbing, he uses these all the time because it's something that it almost falls into that passive category. Or, like, he can walk on walls. That's just a thing he knows he can do. Now, this item he had, the Titan Blade. This is your, he loved this item, and it fit really into his personality. So, it was a great sword. As a bonus action, you can activate the blade, and it grows larger. While the blade is large, every hit deals an extra d6 damage, but you must make a strength save DC 15 at the end of every round. On a failed save, you let the blade fall to the ground, it shrinks to normal size, and you can use this ability multiple times to make the blade grow again, but each time you do it, the damage goes up by a d6, but the DC to maintain and hold it is another +5. So once you let the blade fall to the ground, you can no longer use this ability until a long rest. So that was an item that, like, it could vary. He's a barbarian, he does damage. This let him do more damage, and that was something he never forgot to use because it was something that could make him do more damage. And this item didn't have a +1 to hit or a +1 to damage. It was just a base weapon, but it could increase the damage if you wanted to go for, like, a really powerful hit. I mean, his strength save was a +9, So he'd have to roll a 6 or higher to get it to just do 3d6 damage. So, like, it was a trade-off. But because he's a barbarian, he would be doing that, right? Because that's the whole thing. Let's go check out somebody else. So, Wave, he is a fighter. So, yet again, I gave him a... so, this is an item... So, I gave him the Sentinel Shield. So, that's a bonus on perception checks and initiative rolls. So, on D&D Beyond, it's going to tell him he has advantage right here. So, that helps. But I gave him this armor, the Chill Plate. It's a +1 plate mail. So, that bonus he never forgets. But as a bonus action, he can activate an icy barrier around it, making him immune to cold damage, and he gets temporary hit points. It's like a minor armor of Agathis, and as long as he takes damage when he has those temporary hit points, it does a d8 cold damage. He always forgets to activate it. Every time. Or he'll activate it at the end of combat by accident. Or, like, remember to do it, and then the combat's over. I did, however, give him a +2 flail, and this is something that he never forgets about. Because this flail can make attacks out to 20 feet. You know, the chain extends on it. It's like it can be a Warhammer, or it can be a Morningstar or a flail, so it can kind of go back and forth, but it can extend out 20 feet. And it has 3 charges. He can use a charge to cast the Thunder Wave spell, and it's centered on wherever the head of the flail is. But as long as he still has 1 charge left, it does the regular attacks do an extra d8 of thunder damage. So if he forgets to do that, he's just losing out on damage. So that seems to help him remember that, because that's his thing. So hitting stuff is his thing. So I gave him a thing that lets him hit stuff better. Who else do we have here? Yeah, here's the Oswald's Magnificent Vest. This gives you prestidigitation at will. And gave the monk stuff that lets him hit stuff better. Let's see here. Alright, so this belt, I'll get to that. So this is something that I gave to a player who rolls a lot of natural ones. So up to 3 times per long rest, if you roll a 1 on a d20, you may re-roll it with a +5 bonus. If the second re-roll is a 1, you can count that instead as a natural 20. And these all reset. I think it's on a long rest. I don't actually think I have it here. Oh yeah, 3 times per long rest. So that was something. She rolls a ton of 1s. So that was something that she would never forget about that, because it could turn a 1 around. How do I come up with character concepts when I make a character? Do I start with a voice, a trope, or a cool character from a show? So that's interesting. It depends, I'd say, a lot on... So I have the benefit of doing a lot of D&D related content on the internet, and one of the big benefits of that is I do a lot of DM's Guild reviews, right, for content on the DM's Guild. My DM's Guild library is extensive. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of different modules that I have. And a lot of people like to send me their stuff to review. So I just, every day I get influx emails of, hey, here's my 3 new classes, here's my adventure, here's all this stuff. So that does also help with world building, I'll say, because sometimes I'll find a really cool encounter or a cool, like, one-shot that someone will send me, and I'll want to add that to my game. So what I'll do a lot of the times is, what is the game I'm playing? Is this going to be a one-shot? Is it going to be a long-running campaign? So if it's a one-shot, I usually like to make a tropey, fun character, because if it's going to only be a one-shot, I want to have fun while I'm there. And a lot of the times when I end up doing one-shots, it's with somebody else as like a collab on another person's channel or something. And I want my character to be something that people remember. From a very basic marketing standpoint, if I go on somebody else's channel one time for one game, and I make everybody crack up or think my character is just super badass, people may want to go check out my channel because they like what I did. That's a super basic thing. That's also true. Your meme archive is quite extensive. So that's something, right? A very basic thing. But if this is going to be like a long-running campaign where it's... And then it also depends on the tone of the campaign, right? Like if I'm going to be playing in a Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus campaign and it's super serious, then I'm not going to make like the bard who's tone deaf. Like I'm not going to play that character. It doesn't fit the story, right? But I also... because I played a lot of D&D and I don't really have classes that I hate playing, I usually like to see what everybody else is going to play. Sometimes I do come up with the idea for a character concept, and I'm like, oh my god, I love this. I want to play this. But more often than not, I'll usually wait till the end and let people just tell me what they're going to play. And then based on that, I'll say, okay, so the party needs a healer. Or the party needs a rogue. Or a party needs a tank. And I will fill that role because I play, I get to do D&D stuff a lot. So I always want to make sure that whoever's there is going to have a good time. So I try to make sure I can fill whatever role the party needs so that everybody else can have a better time. I also love playing clerics and paladins too. So sometimes people don't like the trope of being a healer, and I don't have any problem playing a healer. So I will sometimes take that role just to do it. Sometimes it is based around a voice, or I'll come up with a concept like that, and I'll go from there. So, like, my evil game character, right? So here's our evil game characters. It was a bunch of evil characters, right? So I said, okay, we're going to be evil characters. I don't really need to worry too much about what the party has as far as, like, character builds. We're a bunch of evil assholes. We'll probably try to dick each other over whenever we can. I want to try the College of Whispers bard, because I know it's not the best bard by any means, but I really like the idea of a tiefling College of Whispers bard. I'm going to be a bard who's going to like mess with people and steal their identities and be like a super con artist. And I just like that character concept, and that's kind of what I built my character to be. Yeah, exactly. Same thing, you're right, with guest streams and stuff like that. So I haven't really gotten a chance to play much else like recently to look at like other characters. So we were supposed to be playing tomorrow in a game that one of my friends Celine is going to be running. And she, well, two of the people that are playing, the DM and one of the players, both have pneumonia, so they're not going to be here tomorrow. So that's going to be an interesting thing when we figure out what we're actually going to do tomorrow. But I made this guy, Kane Palehand, because I really love the Bone Knight Prestige class from Eberron 5 Nations from 3.5. And I found a pretty good replication of that in 5th edition. And there's a lot of big Eberron buzz lately, so Eberron's on my mind. So I was like, man, I never got to play that character in 3.5. I'll never get to play it the way I wanted to play it, because I don't get a chance to play 3.5 stuff ever, really. So I want to play this character. And here's the thing, Ash. You're wrong. You are 100% wrong. His name is Kane Palehand. He's an archaeologist, and he studies undead. And he is the most chipper, upbeat person you will ever meet. Because I don't like being super tropey all the time. I thought it'd be really fun to play a character who has an undead servant, an undead warhorse. He studies undead. He uses necromantic magic. He wields a scythe as his weapon. His name is all sorts of dark and broody, and he is just like super chipper and happy all the time and excited to be a part of everything. Because no one expects the necromancer to be a happy guy. And that was just like a fun concept for me. Like, why not, right? Like, that's a fun, goofy thing for me to do. Yeah, exactly. An interesting character concept, necromancer who thinks he's a cleric. Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of options that you can play around with stuff. So, you know, right, like, they just released the Unearthed Arcana for the Wildfire Druid. And Druids were my favorite class in 3.5. And I really want to get into a campaign that's relatively long-running and play a Wildfire Druid. Because my original 3.5 character was a druid, but he had a big penchant for fire magic. So it's the closest thing I could get to replicating that. So I would love to do that. And how would I play that character? I don't really know yet. Would he be a pyromaniac and be like, oh, burning things? Or would he just be like, you know, slash and burn, you know, from the fire comes new life kind of a thing? Or maybe he's just like a dude who doesn't have any super defining personality traits at the moment, but he likes fire, and that's just cool. And, like, that's a character I want to play. Will I ever find a game where I get to play it in? Probably not. But hey, it is what it is. Yeah, there's a lot of cool options out there. So sometimes I'll see someone will send me a subclass that they created. Someone will send me a full class that they created. Unearthed Arcana will catch my eye. And I'll be like, I want to play this character. And then I'll try to find an opportunity to play it. Unfortunately, more often than not, my opportunities to play that is going to be in a one-shot. And that sucks. It doesn't suck because I get to play it. But, like, I want to play this character... I want to develop this character, I want to get different abilities, I want to do the stuff, and that's unfortunate. The only time I've really been able to try to do that a little bit is like with Adventure League stuff, where I'll have a bunch of Adventure League characters, and if I go to a convention, maybe I can sit down and play an AL character. But you don't really get character growth with an Adventure League character unless you play with the same DM in the same group every week. And mine is usually, I'm here for 2 hours at a convention with a bunch of people who I don't know, who I'll likely never see again, and we're just trying to get through the module. And, like, that's the extent of me getting to play that character. Good example, I've wanted to play a rogue since D&D 3.5, and I've never gotten a chance to play a rogue, because every campaign that I've been invited to play, that I wanted to play a rogue in, somebody else in the party picked a rogue already. And then I was just like, well, I don't think we need to have 2 rogues in the party, so I never get to be one. So, like, I've tried to play a rogue in probably 7 or 8 campaigns in 5th edition, and every time, like, I sit down at the table, like, even if it's early on and I'm not trying to do, like, the good guy thing where I'll be whatever the party needs, I'll sit down at the table and then be like, all right, so what's everybody playing? And then somebody will be like, I'm playing a rogue, or, like, only one person will have chosen their character and it's already a rogue, so I'm like, well, there goes that idea. Yes, okay, well, let's make that happen then. But it's true, like, I got one of my first times as a player in 5th edition, I sat down at the table and I was like, alright, what's, like, only one character had made one player had made a character, and they were the Edgelord Rogue. Yes, I absolutely know you can have more than one rogue. I 100% get that. But it was I think a paladin, a druid, and a rogue. Paladin, a warlock, paladin, a warlock, and a rogue. So I was like, I'll just be a cleric. We need a cleric. It's fine. And I actually love that character. He's one of my favorite characters to this day. But, like, that's just how that worked. And then I was going to sit down to play at, like, a game, some of the other games that are streamed on the channel. And people were just like, oh, I'm going to be a rogue. And, like, and it's not, like, don't get me wrong, it's not every time. Like, I could have played a rogue in this campaign right here. But I know, like, I was teetering between this and this fighter Bone Knight character and a rogue. And then one of the other guys rolled such garbage stats, he could have one good stat, and he's like, I think I'm going to be a rogue so I can use my one good stat in dexterity. So I was like, you can have it, man. Don't worry about it. So my eventual plan, probably for my evil game character, is to multi-class into rogue just for more expertise options in the future. I don't know when that would be, but, like, he's a level 6 bard, so he can do a lot of skill stuff. And he has some tool proficiencies and things. So at some point, I'll probably take at least a 1-level dip in Rogue so I can get, another skill, Thieves Tools, and then expertise in Thieves Tools, and then expertise in whatever that skill is. Because, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty stacked out right now with this character. But, yeah, it's just something... So we played in a high-level campaign, and my character in that campaign basically sacrificed himself and went to hell to save the party. And I rolled a new character to continue the campaign as a rogue. And I got to play that character for maybe the first half an hour of the session. And then the rest of the party was going to hell to rescue my old character. So then I had to play as my old character. And I was, like, fully set up to play my new character. And the DM's like, well, now you're going to play your old character because they're rescuing you from hell. Which is fine. But I just really wanted to play the rogue. And that never ended up happening. So yeah, it just, that's something that I've always wanted to do. Just because I think I could do it really well. And it's just, yeah, I know. You can watch it. That video exists on the internet, that particular stream. I'll have to see if I can find it. Yeah, I'll have to find it. But yeah, and it's just like, I love the Scout Rogue, I think is probably my favorite rogue. I really want to play it. So I played a Scout Rogue in an Adventure League campaign, an Adventure League couple sessions here and there, and it was fun. But I think like a Scout Rogue really goes well on like a long-term campaign because you get to level up and you get the different abilities. And I could be that cool wilderness guy, but also be good in the city because I'm a rogue. Like, I think that could be fun. Yeah, right. So, I mean, like I said, there's been campaigns where something came out, and I was like, no, I definitely want to play this. Like, in our Storm King's Thunder campaign, Hexblade, Unearthed Arcana just dropped, so I was like, I want to play this, because Hexblade was another one of my favorite classes from 3.5. So I was like, let me play this, and I did, and I enjoyed that. But, like, had I decided to play a rogue at some other point in a campaign where somebody else didn't decide to, like, jump on the rogue right out the gate, I probably would have been okay. Like I said, I'm not saying, like, there are times where I could have, but, like, if it's, like I said, if I'm going to be in a one-shot or something, more often than not, I'll go for the goofy, fun character than, like, the character that I ultimately want to play. Like, I played an Adventure Maidens one-shot, and I made Bob Ross the Artificer, right? I played in the one-shot with Greg at, I don't know if Greg's still in the chat, but I played the one-shot with Greg at Gen Con where we were on the Magic the Gathering stage playing a game, and I played a Snake Man named Stan, and I did that because that way I could just really draw out all my S's, and that was like a stupid thing that the chat and the party, like the audience loved, and they made like a big deal out of it. So yeah, it's yeah, the part of the reason I want to play Scout Rogue is because it's a better Ranger than Ranger. But yeah. Way back to Gutroach's comment. Gutroach, I don't even know if you're still in the chat anymore. From way back when, talking about homebrew monsters. That's a whole nother story. What I find when I try to do homebrew monsters in 5th edition is I'll usually go back to my old 3.5 resources and look up the monsters that existed back then and see if they've brought that to 5th edition. And if they haven't, I usually will do that because there's a lot of there was a lot of books for 3.5 and a lot of monsters. So I can usually find something interesting, and then I will get that and I'll incorporate it into this game. Or I'll look at my D&D or my DM's Guild resources. So let's go ahead and jump over to the DM's Guild. Because my library, as I said, is quite extensive. I can usually find a good resource. So how many pages is my DM's Guild thing? 64 pages, 640 total modules on here from the looks of that, and I'm sure there's some that I have not downloaded yet. But do I have? Let me see. One of the things I really enjoy using is my good friend Dragonix has made this guide, which is a fantastic thing. The Monster Manual Expanded on the DM's Guild. I highly recommend this one if you haven't seen my review on it or checked it out. This is expansions and additions. It's a 340-page document, right? So it's extensive. But it adds a bunch of stuff to existing things in the Monster Manual, right? So here's two new. There's an Aboleth Overseer, sound rating 20, or an Aboleth Slime Lord, right? We have different Aboleths to add to our campaign. Different angels to add. All sorts of different things. You can go through here and find, like, again, here's an Ankeg. An Ankeg Brood Queen. You can make this into a weird xenomorphic thing. They can spit acid. They have acid blood. You could make a whole aliens campaign or an aliens encounter based on an Ankeg, right? I mean, there's like, this is an option. I'm not saying you need to pick this up or use this as your only option for for expanding homebrew monsters, but this is a fantastic one. Right? He's a Cloaker Lord. We've got different Chuls. greater cockatrice is a challenge rating 8. Like that could mess some people up, right? I mean, you throw in a greater cockatrice and a couple of smaller ones, you could have some pretty crazy stuff going on. Again, not necessary, but there are a lot of good resources out there. There was the Monster a Day thing on it was a homebrew thing that was happening on like Reddit, I think, where people were coming out with new homebrew monsters once a day. And that was, let me pull it up over here and see if I can find it. I don't know if it still exists. It got pulled down, I think, at one point, but I think I managed to save a copy of it. Let me see if I still have it. And that's usually a pretty good option for pulling up different monsters. You've probably seen a bunch of these. Let me see. Where is this? Nope. Maybe it's over here. But that's usually a really good resource. I mean, you can go on, like, I don't know, just internet, Reddit, honestly, even like Tumblr. I found a whole bunch of interesting ones, and Pinterest, and just search homebrew D&D, and you'll find a whole bunch of really interesting stuff. Do I have? Where is it? Come on, homebrew monsters. Where are you at? Monster stat blocks. Is this it? Bolt line mirror. Is it? No, that's not it. Damn, I'm right there. Almost got it. Sorry guys. Give me 1 sec here while I find this. What the hell is it? School of Mesmer, Reliquary Seeker, Shovel Knight, Ancient Dragon Pact, Kanto Pokédex, and Dungeons and Dragons. What the hell is this thing? I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it, so we may just have to call it quits if I can't find it, which I don't think I can, unfortunately. But yeah, that was a really good resource as well. People have made a stat sheet for Shaggy. That is true. They did do that. I saw that. I think you sent that to me, actually. So yeah, homebrew magic, homebrew monsters is tricky, because you never know, right? I mean, it could work out. It's also tricky to balance monsters against challenge rating things. So I don't know. I often find I'm really good at doing homebrew NPCs that are like enemies, like actual characters, because I can create interesting, unique characters in that way. So let me see. Do I have? I might have it. Is it? No, I might have found that RPG thing I was telling you about. Monster Day Compendium. Did I just find it? I did. It's downloading at the moment, so we'll look into that too. Challenge rating can be tricky. There's a lot of weird calculations for it, and I don't think it's handled particularly well in some cases. It can be, but if you look at like certain things that are balanced at one challenge rating versus other things, sometimes you're like, what? How does this even make sense? And like you can absolutely decimate people. Yeah, Doc Brown, exactly. Like I did my Bob Ross Artificer. He was great for a one-shot because he was funny, and everybody enjoyed that. So like that was great. I'm glad I got to play that character. But I couldn't. I don't think I could enjoy it fully as a full long-term character. You know, it just wouldn't work. Where is this damn thing? Oh, I don't know. I'll have to just keep going. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's always a good time. It was interesting to play an artificer who had, you know, used his magic with artists. Like, he painted everything. So I would paint stuff and then have it appear. So that was fun. But, you know, it's not a long-term character. Let's see. Well, the Monster Day Compendium is not downloading, but let's see if we can get it. Maybe we can find it over here. Yeah, I feel like for one reason it got like shut down. Oh wait, Monster Day Compendium V2. Okay. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Yeah. So let's see if you guys have seen any of these. These are some really good homebrew ones that are interesting. Yeah, these are them. There's some really cool options in here that were created that you can add into your campaign. Clockwork Dragon. I'm sure you've seen some of these out and about. I really like a lot of these ones, so I would recommend. Some of these are new, like I have the Death Widow, that's a new one. But yeah, you could definitely add these to your campaign. The Dire Anglerfish. I've seen and I've fought some of these in my campaign, or in campaigns. So like the Feode. I mean, come on, you got some cool options in here to add to your campaign. Oh, here's a creature from the Black Lagoon. Ginormous Squirrel. Here's the Gnoll Death Knight. Talking of gnolls earlier, this was one of them, as was the Gnoll Death Mage. Ice Golem. See, there's a lot of cool options here. Headless Horseman. Yeah, I really like a lot of these, so I would recommend using, if you want, this is free. I'll link it in the chat. You can definitely use this in your campaign, or use it to make some monsters up for your game. Yep, you guys got it right here. Actually, can I get you this link right here? Here, this is the Google Drive link. But yeah, it's pretty sweet, and I've seen, like I said, I've seen a lot of these over the years. He's a Lizard Folk Monk, the Luck Dragon, which is cool, it can be a familiar. The Magma Bear, I really like that one a lot. I've fought my players with these, I've used these. The Pumpkin King was as a head of one of our, the final boss of one of our 24-hour, our original 24-hour charity stream. So, you know, there's some pretty good ones out here that you could definitely add into any campaign. Enemy, I mean, like the skeleton on fire is dangerous. The skeleton with the extra arms. The snow spider is really cool. I'm a big fan of that one. There's a Skulltula, right? Like, that's what that is. They're not calling it that because of copyright, but that's what it is. I've used the Swarm of Squirrels. I gave somebody a magic item that let them summon a swarm of squirrels. And that was a pretty cool thing. They like to do that. Let's see. Anything other interesting? I've used the Werewolf Alpha before. Here's a White Walker. Haha. Oh, the NPCs are new. At the end here. These are all new. Actually, maybe they're not. I just didn't see them compiled into this the same way. Techno Thug. Nice. Yeah, that's 103 pages. It's a pretty decent resource for you. So I don't know how much longer I'm going to keep this stream going. We've been going for about 2.5 hours of me just rambling on over here. God, yeah, 2 hours and 35 minutes of just me talking at you. Which is impressive that I've been able to do this without losing my voice. So, yeah, I guess what I'll say is, does anybody have any more questions that I can answer in the chat? and to see what we want to do for next week. So I have a theory, and I'll pose this to you guys for next week. While I wait to see if any questions and things come up. So one thing that I'm thinking might be fun is... Oh, did I just get a message? I did, but that's okay. We can worry about that one later. What I will say is what I think I'll do is I'll probably go into my map. Well, I'm glad. Thank you, Craven. We'll come back tomorrow. We'll be maybe playing a game, or it may be more Q&A stuff. I haven't really figured out what we're going to do because one of our DM who was supposed to run it, she's got pneumonia. The game that I was supposed to run, or that I would run, her character is like the main catalyst for this part of the story, so I can't run it. And 2 of our characters are out for our evil campaign. But maybe I'll still try to convince Jake to run the campaign tomorrow. If not, me, Jake, and Pat will be here tomorrow doing something. It may end up just turning into us like hanging out, chatting for a little bit, and then us streaming Smash Brothers, if I'm being completely honest with you. We talked about doing like a mini painting thing, but like we don't have any good close-up cameras, so mini painting won't be that interesting. But anyway, what I'm thinking about doing, possibly, for next week is maybe I'll pick out one of these cities that the players haven't gone to yet. I'll pick out one of the cities the players haven't gone to yet, and maybe we'll just build it. Like I think Kingsdale, for instance, I haven't really built out too much there. I have a general concept of what the city is and what's there. A couple like high-level concepts, but I don't have like names of taverns, names of shops, cool, interesting things they do in the town, or NPCs. And so maybe if we do that next week, we'll pick that town, and then we can start filling out, this document, right? We'll start filling this out with as much stuff as we can. I have some very high-level stuff for it, and I think maybe that'd be fun. What do you guys think? We'll work on it together, and we'll try to build it as best we can, and see if we can't. We can still keep doing the chat and the interaction and asking questions for sure, but maybe we can do. Maybe we can build the town itself and see what we think. I don't know. What do you guys think? Sound like a good idea? Build a town together, and then still keep doing chats and Q&A and whatever else comes up. I'm also trying to figure out what I want to do. Do I upload this video to YouTube? I guess I probably should. It's just a long video of me just kind of rambling, but hey, it's been fun, so maybe I will. Yeah, so that I think is pretty much... hey, Irish names are good. I'm garbage at naming. I use random generators quite a bit. Well, let me throw out a couple things. We do have 2 sponsors here on the channel, which I will throw out for you guys. One of our sponsors is Initiative Coffee Company. That's not the right thing. It's coffee, you dummy. Man, that's how much I need coffee right now. So they're a cool coffee company made by gamers. Coffee made by gamers for gamers. You can use our coupon code and get a little bit off. Another good friend of the channel is our friends at Elderwood Academy. They provide all the cool gaming products that I use, the rolling trays and dice trays and things like that. And we have an affiliate link, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of cool stuff coming in the future. Another top 10 video will be coming out tomorrow. I'll be doing top 10 magic items for clerics tomorrow on the YouTube channel. Come out around noontime tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. And then, yeah, I've got a bunch of I have a DM's Guild queue that was almost gone, and I have like 50 things in it now because people keep sending me stuff. So I need to, like, I have a book too. I have like a physical book here, Modern Dungeons. I got this one recently. This is like a modern adaptation for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons that Panic Productions had sent to me. I'm supposed to review this. I just haven't had the time. Yeah, so like, this is something on my list to get to. How to do different classes and different things as a in a modern setting. Add that to the list. But yeah, I will be back. I'll be back tomorrow with something, and then Wednesday I should be back building another character. We did bring back It Builds character. I finally did it again this week. If you don't know that, that's a show I do every Wednesday, where I build characters in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, pop culture characters. So I'll pull up what the plan is. What is next? What is Wednesday? I think it's Ben 10, actually. That's going to be fun. Yeah, so Wednesday I'm going to try to build Ben 10 from the TV show, Ben 10, as a 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons character. I have no idea how I'm going to do that, but I can certainly try, and I would love to have you guys there in the chat to help me figure out how to do it. We do have some other interesting ones coming up in the future, characters to build. We built some interesting ones in the past. So if you want to come out, that'll be Wednesday. So again, thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. You've made this 2.5 hours go by relatively quickly, I'd say. And I look forward to building some stuff with you guys in the future. I also have some very fun writing projects in the future. So I may or may not have some stuff that I can't really talk about where I will be in a published book, possibly, in the future. So we'll see how that goes. Third party, not official. Still early. But maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, the Dragon's Dogma character, I did that. The video, we did that last Wednesday. That video will come out on Wednesday. So I will put out that video on YouTube if you want to see how that went. Anyway, everyone, have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Hopefully. Yeah, Percy Jackson's on there. I love Percy Jackson's one of my absolute favorite book series. So I'm very pumped to build Percy Jackson. So we'll see if I can pull off an interesting seaweed brain to make Annabeth proud. Anyway, folks, have a wonderful evening. I'll see you guys next time.